thing on the agenda will be the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Supervisor Powers.
Turn on my mic.
Mine's on, use mine.
I'll use.
It shows that it's on.
Good and gracious Creator, look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Give us comfort, grace, and support to all survivors of domestic violence, survivors of criminal assault, survivors of drug and alcohol abuse, survivors of disaster, survivors of predatory lending practices. Let us work through our struggles and theirs, that we may accomplish all good things here on earth. Amen.
Amen. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of this evening's agenda? Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Carried. Public comments. At this time, anyone from the public may speak to the board on anything that has to do with public business. I should say the county business, anything that's on the agenda or otherwise, as long as it's within Winnebago counties. Is there anyone that wishes to talk to the board this evening or speak to it? Please go up to the microphone, state your name and address. Anyone on Zoom? Not seeing any, we'll move right along. Reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Supervisor Plom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to update the board on the progress of the structure review task force. We recently met on last week, and we were able to approve a survey that went out to the whole county board. Every supervisor should have it in your inbox about committee structure. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of the task force members. And so we plan to meet again on May 11th at 9:30 a.m. at the County Administration Building. I will be getting an agenda over to the clerk's office ASAP to discuss a similar survey for department heads. So that is where we are currently at. We invited Fond du Lac County Executive Sam Kaufman to our previous meeting, and he gave a good overview of Fond du Lac County's committee process. He's a former county board chair himself, so very insightful. And our next meeting following the 11th will be on May 25th at 6 o'clock at the County Administration Building as well for our next business meeting. So 2 more there. Thank you.
Supervisor Defferding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on Friday, April 21st, there was a Chief Justice Summit on Mental Health at the Holiday Inn Madison at the American Center in Madison, Wisconsin. And there was four different parts at that summit. First one was a kind of a roundtable discussion with Attorney General Josh Kaul, State Senator Jesse James, State Representative Dora Drake, State Public Defender Attorney Kelly Thompson, and Fond du Lac District Attorney Eric Toney, and Chief Dean Smith, the City of Oshkosh Police Department and President of the Wisconsin Chief of Police Association. And the next one was a kind of examining the Arizona model in regards to their mental health courts and their mental health system there. The next part of that, the next forum was a bunch of judges from Wisconsin went down to Miami to take a look at their mental health model and how they approach things. And then the final part of that mental health summit was very much just kind of a brainstorming session with the people within our county on what we can do. And so I sat with Officer Scott Zapata from the Oshkosh Police and Heather Faust from Behavioral Health, from Winnebago County Behavioral Health. and Judge Mike Gibbs, and also Dean Smith, Officer Dean Smith, Chief of Police. So we're going to be meeting again on May 19th, and in this building at noon, just basically to take a look at and do some brainstorming sessions on what Winnebago County can do in regards to those with mental health conditions that are involved in the criminal justice system, and what we can do to connect them to various services, local services here, and whether it's time for us to establish a mental health court, and what would that look like, how we can sustain it, and how we can promote it as well. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to offer a shout out to the Oshkosh Examiner online newspaper for its continuing coverage of Winnebago County Board and Government Affairs. Their last issue, Monday, May 1st, 2023, presented tonight's agenda to the public. I dare say it behooves each and every county board member to learn about the Examiner and see if it's a value for your duties.
Not seeing any other lights on. I'll go ahead and do my report real quick. First thing is I'm going to bring up again, there'll be one more meeting, but for those of you that wish to go ahead and put money in towards a bench or a tree or something for Mike, that is what we're doing this time. We are not going to go ahead and buy like plant or whatever. Like I said, they're not having a funeral as of now that we know of. So if you want, just go ahead and get a hold of Karen Powers, and she has a card in that over there. If you don't want to put money in even and you just want to sign the card, you're more than welcome to. But that's what we're heading to, and we do have a supervisor that said that he will make sure that if we don't get enough for a bench, that he will take care of getting a bench for him. So we thank that supervisor, and if he wishes later on, I will state his name. But so if you'd like to, go ahead and see Supervisor Powers, and she'll take care of that. The other thing is CFA conference is coming up. Go ahead and get that in right away to the clerk's office. The sooner the better, because I heard the rooms are getting kind of short already. So get that in. Our tour is coming up here. Should be on your desk. There again, that's the 15th of May, starting at 8 o'clock. I know some of the highway people said, well, we have a meeting at that time. Well, maybe the meeting will have to get changed for the highway or whatever. But there's 11 places that we want to go to visit, including, of course, lunch. But this is, items are approximate times, and also maybe we won't be able to stop at every place. I don't think I've been on a tour yet that we've gotten to every place, but we'd really like to, if we could go ahead and stay on time and keep on moving. I know we get there and we like to ask questions, and that's what it's for. That's why we go to these places, to ask them. But if we can go ahead and keep on time as much as possible, we'll get to see these, and we'll try to get everyone back by, at the latest, 3, if not earlier. So that's on your desk. That also you have to put in RSVP and get that into the clerks as soon as possible. And I guess that's all I really have, other than we've got a lot of good meetings going on at this time now. I can't believe everything that's going on in Winnebago County. Nothing bad. Everybody's really putting a lot of hard work into it. You're all doing a great job, and I think that's great that we're all working together as a community or as a board or whatever you want to say. I appreciate it, and I want to thank all of you. Moving right on to our zoning reports. Report number 1, Divine Journey Home Buyers LLC, Town of Winneconne. Supervisor, what did we say? Nelson? Supervisor Nelson.
I would ask for approval of the
Just hold on here, I gotta find you here. There you're on. You want to repeat it, please?
Yeah, I would ask for approval, I'm missing my numbers here, for the approval for the Divine Journey Home Builders LLC on LaBelle Road, parcel 03002 39-06P. I would ask for the approval of that rezoning.
That would be report number 1.
Report number 001.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering what Divine Journey is. Is this a cemetery, or what is this? Divine Journey. What kind of organization is it?
My understanding, it is just a developer that wants to develop the 4 lots there. I don't believe it's anything other than residential homes. The question on it was some drainage issues, that's why it was pulled last month.
Supervisor Hintz, did you have anything to add to that? I think that's all it was.
No, this was pretty straightforward. It's just, sorry. This is pretty straightforward. It was, and the Divine Journey is Home Buyers LLC, so I'm guessing that's the group that buys the homes and then, or buys the properties and then develops the homes.
Okay, motion is made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Carried. Number 2, a mandatory ordinance number 03-001-23, rezoning from R1 rural residential to R2 suburban low-density residential. Got my thing up here now. Supervisor Nelson.
I would ask for approval of a mandatory ordinance number 03-001-23, rezoning from R1 to rural residential R2 suburban low-density residential.
That's seconded by Supervisor Nussbaum. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Carried. Moving right along, we'll go into our presentations. The first one we'll have tonight is the Winter Storm Brooklyn Emergency Order. We'll have Ethan Hollenberg, County Executive Assistant, Bill Topol, Director of Human Services, and Eric Rasmussen, Emergency Management Director. You want to come?
While she's getting that up, we have a pinch hitter. We have the Deputy Director, Renee Sirocco. Bill's here, but Renee was our incident commander when running the shelter, so he asked that she give the part of the presentation related to how the shelter ran. Yeah, all the presentations tonight are printed. We're getting feedback. All right, so we'll keep going. So there's really 4 components to the presentation. First, we're going to talk about the winter storm conditions and the warnings that we had the week prior. So we'll talk about how common it is when we have storms like this to go through some of the processes that we did, which eventually resulted in the emergency order. That will be done by Eric Rasmussen, the Director of Emergency Management. I will go through the timeline of why Winnebago County and the county executive decided the emergency order was what we needed for the case at hand, and kind of the 48 hours or so prior to taking over and operating the shelter. Renee will take over the running of the shelter and give our costs, not only for the emergency, but after the emergency as we assisted day by day in some hoteling and other resources that we've been doing for several years. And then lastly, Eric will talk about the after-action review and the hot wash with recommendations from our outside consultant. Is this ready? Oh, I hit the wrong button. Oh, there we go. And then one of the things that we want to make clear is mass sheltering is a function of county government. I know there was a lot of debate about this, but in our emergency response plan, emergency support function 6 is a function of human services that we do sheltering. You'll hear over the course of the presentation that we do sheltering quite frequently. If there's a fire, whether it's an apartment complex or a single-family home, potentially the county is involved with the Red Cross, usually to find that sheltering. So situations like this happen over the country, and it certainly happens for evacuations and other things. So what's important to understand is housing and emergency sheltering is a function of the county's emergency plan that we pass. The other thing is we know that Day by Day is here later this evening to discuss their new shelter. We would ask that you would ask questions if you have questions about the emergency order, to ask them during this part. And if you have questions of them later, that's fine. But we really wanted to wrap up the emergency order and the report in this section for you. So we ask that we do that so they can talk about their project and keep it to the Neighborhood Improvement Fund grant. And so with that, we'll have Eric brief on the conditions.
Good evening, everyone. The first notice that we had from the National Weather Service about the storm event was on December 16th. Part of their day 2 through 7 forecast, an Arctic air mass will cause temperatures to plummet during the late part of next week. Overnight lows are expected to fall below 0 across most locations during this period, with daytime highs in the single digits at times. Coldest temperatures are expected Tuesday, December 20th, night into Wednesday, December 21st, with possible wind chills in the teens to 20s below 0. Another important fact is part of the situation, too, as we prepared for emergency response. In the west part of the state on the 16th, they did have a winter storm event that left almost 80,000 people without power. So most of our lineman crews throughout the region of the country, we're currently working in that area trying to restore power. Just a little background, the wind chill chart there, it just shows the factor between wind and temperature to calculate wind chill. Quick difference between frostbite and hypothermia. Frostbite is when we have our extremities, they start to freeze. Hypothermia is a decrease in body temperature. With hypothermia, some of those severe hypothermia conditions that we think about are extreme confusion, decline in consciousness, and a coma that can eventually result in death. As we approach that storm on December 20th, they're anticipating a minimum wind chill in the week of -17 from the National Weather Service. You'll continue to see this kind of drop throughout the week. On the 21st is the first time we start hearing concerns about large-scale power outages. So that's where that already plays in, right? As we know in the west part of the state, a lot of our resources are already being utilized over there. So that's kind of a scary factor in this for us, too. Wind chills in the low -20s that day. Following day, we have an anticipated wind chill of -30. So at -30, you're getting frostbite symptoms within 10 minutes of exposure. December 22nd is also when the governor declared an emergency order for the state for the winter storm. A lot of that was based on fuel supplies and power restoration to let us bring in resources from the federal level. On the 23rd, we finally, in those forecasts, start to see a break. So the middle of the week, you'll see December 28th, 27th, 28th is when we're going to finally start to come out of that. We finally got a bunch of rain, I guess, after that too, didn't we? Other important note, on the 23rd, WE Energies services a large portion of our county. They actually did have a failure, an equipment failure, and asked people to reduce their thermostats for a day, and then we're able to bring that back online. It's just another one of those things where we had a lot of power outage concerns during this. You've heard me talk up here several times about the generator. That's why we're going there, right? But just something else to keep in mind as we look at that too. So what really happened on weather conditions? December 23rd and 24th were the coldest days. The lowest temperature was -11. Wind speed, we had a sustained 30-mile-an-hour wind with gusts between 35 and 40 miles an hour. Based on the wind chill chart, we would have had a wind chill about -40.
So what Eric just walked through is something that happens on a regular basis when we have storms that occur. If you remember in 2021, we had a significant, was it a derecho in EAA, AirVenture? A derecho and AirVenture where we thought that we were going to have some significant damage. Those came the first few days. And Eric got engaged with AirVenture, and we were doing sheltering then. In that time, it was at the arena that the Red Cross helped us in that case. So in 2021, we had been working with a nonprofit, AirVenture, to shelter those folks, and they evacuated. And so the first point here is it happens quite frequently where the county steps up and finds and tries to do shelter. In a normal circumstance, we can typically do hoteling, we can typically do some other type of accommodation. In this case, we were headed towards the holiday weekend, and we were headed towards significant cold weather, and we had a population that we knew is already unsheltered, that was going to also lose their home. And so we had difficulties with the population. We also had difficulties potentially with hoteling because of capacity for the holidays, and then of course the population. And so, again, under the normal circumstances of what county government does, we have emergency preparedness folks who knew the holiday was coming and who knew that the cold weather was coming, and they started calling around, making sure we had warm places for people to go during the holidays. Typically, government buildings are where we would house a warming during the day. The library, our State Street Center, some schools. We're heading towards the holidays where those are going to be closed. We also were headed towards a weather situation where they were also going to close. And so we were notified at about 4:30 on Monday the 19th that day by day was short of staff, and amongst other issues, we're going to close. And so we had, with day by day specifically, participated in some sheltering planning. We participated in 2020 for them to open in the summer during COVID. We assisted them during a COVID staff issue in actually Thanksgiving weekend in 2020. And again, we found out they were closing through our normal operations of emergency response. Tuesday morning, December 20th, county and city officials met to determine how to shelter this known population that will be losing housing. And so it's not just the people who were at day by day, but those who we may not know are living in their car or living outside and it's getting cold. So where are they going to go? Emergency order was discussed much of that day. However, the route to do an emergency order under the statute wasn't determined until about 5 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, you all met and were briefed by the county executive that this is where we think we're headed to try to save as many people as we could in the sheltering. It wasn't until after that county board meeting, really, that we determined we had the capacity and the ability to stand this thing up in about 8 more hours' notice. And so it was Wednesday the 21st that county staff determined we can do this and where we were going to do this. You might remember there was a rumor that we were looking at Sunnyview for various reasons that was not a good fit for this population. And as it turns out, had we had another sheltering issue, an apartment complex lose power and heat, the WE Energies, the WPS Energy lose, where we needed other populations to go, Christine Ann Center, we would have needed Sunnyview. So doing this emergency response in the location of the shelter by mid-morning became the best place for us to do that. It was their home. and it was best to keep the population there. What we didn't know then was we were going to get a good response from staff on staffing it. At about 11 a.m., the county executive sent an email. By 12:30, we had shifts for the next 2 weeks full. And Renee will go into the shelter, but we were only anticipating, as Eric said, like a day or two 24/7. We thought this was going to break around Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, but we later learned that it did not break. In fact, it kept getting colder through the holiday weekend. So from Wednesday the 21st through July 9th, the county runs the shelter, or a shelter, a little bit differently than what the day-by-day normal mission would be, but it was this emergency response for the unsheltered. And so that's where our incident commander, Renee Sirocco, kind of took over and is going to run the next 3 weeks.
All right. Every time I still hear myself referred to as incident commander for this time, I kind of look around like, oh, yeah, me. Just an unusual role for this time. So yes, right around this time, then we staffed the facility for, initially it was 2 weeks, because we just, at that point, we just asked staff to commit to 2 weeks, and then we went the full 3 weeks. We were very fortunate to have some county staff that had worked at the shelter before, so they were able to come in and assist us with getting set up. Because as you've heard, we Human Services or the county had not been tasked with solely running a shelter by ourselves before. We've assisted with Red Cross, we've helped out before, but we weren't responsible for doing it on our own before. So luckily we had folks who knew what they were doing. Molly and staff were around, so we were calling and asking questions. So luckily we were able to get up and running very quickly, as you heard. So we staffed for Wednesday through Monday, 24 hours. And as Ethan said, that wasn't the plan. Day by day typically runs 5:30 p.m. to 8 a.m. That was our plan too. But as we heard, because of the weather, we quickly decided we needed to stay open 24 hours, which meant we needed to staff it 24 hours through the biggest holiday of the year. Yeah. So continue to be very impressed, and shout out to all of county-wide. It wasn't just Human Services staff who stepped up and made this happen. So OPD, Oshkosh Police Department, committed to 2 police officers for the evening night shifts, so to speak, 5:30 p.m. to 8 a.m. That was their commitment from the beginning. Again, the 24-hour piece for those 4 days wasn't a part of it. So they were there 5:30 p.m. to 8 a.m., which was very helpful. They were there for the full 3 weeks. We had meals brought in from Parkview, our nursing home, and the sheriff's department supplied meals. We had public health staff, county staff, running those meals back and forth. Day by day staff had made motel arrangements for some of their guests that they knew and could trust to sustain in motels, which proved to be very helpful for us because that freed up space at the shelter, which meant we could serve more people. And so between Molly staff and county staff, we made sure that the folks in the motels were getting their meals, and we had folks running meals out there to them too, and giving them laundry cards and all the things that they would have had at the shelter. Well, the best that we could do anyway, because obviously they weren't at the shelter to get their clothes washed and things like that. We wanted to still make sure those folks were being checked on, and laundry and transportation cards. And so it really was a collaborative effort, and Molly and I had to stay in close contact. And what are your staff doing? What are my staff doing to make sure that we could pull this off? Facility staff, we had a broken window. We had either a washing machine or a dryer that didn't work. And so this obviously isn't a county facility. And guess what? Facility staff were over there too right now fixing stuff. So we could just keep on trucking, and that's exactly what happened. So the meals, that happened with the other county departments supplying meals until things settled a little bit and we could re-engage volunteers, because typically how Day by Day operates is volunteers come in and serve warm meals to the guests there. And so once we got our footing, we had the volunteers come back, and our local restaurants, Culver's, Executive Damel's own Zeroni's, and Tamara, the cake guru, and I apologize if I'm missing some other folks, heard about what we were doing and dropped off hot meals too. And so huge shout out to the community to trying to pitch in as well. Different needs and concerns came up, just like anything, and we just kept rolling with it and adjusting and making things happen and calling who we needed to make sure our guests were taken care of. And we're really proud to say that no one was turned away. We kept on with the motels. Again, Molly and I would talk about, okay, you guys know these folks better than we do. Do you think we can shuffle? And because we were reaching capacity a couple of times, I didn't actually bring those stats with me. Can we move more folks into motels so that we can keep space? We had law enforcement bringing people at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., which is not uncommon for the shelter, but again, for us, having to adjust to that and making sure we had space so nobody was turned away. And so again, Molly and staff were like, yep, I think these folks can maintain. And so we continued through this whole 3 weeks to put people in motels as we could to free up space. So to my knowledge, we did not have any deaths due to hypothermia through these 3 weeks. So Winnebago can be really proud of that. Ethan shared in a meeting earlier today, which I was not aware of, that during this storm, Milwaukee County actually had a death because of being out in the cold. So I'm very grateful that we were all able to come together and make this happen. So we served during this 3-week county-run time 381 guests, and they are duplicative because some folks come back night after night and some folks come once and we never see them again. But we counted 381. And we partnered, like Ethan mentioned, we'd partnered with the shelter in the past. Some of the other services that continued to be county funded past January 9th were, we brought in Star Security so that the shelter day by day, when they resumed operations, they could have a security officer on site between 5:30 p.m. and 8 a.m. while they were operating. And I believe that was still in place up until now, till April 30th. That was the county date of here's how long we'll fund this, knowing that they will be moving into their new facility soon, and you'll hear more about that later. So as you'll see in terms of costs, these are our costs through April 26th. We don't have all the final things in because that takes a while, for us to get the bills. But this is where we were for labor and fringe, $123,350. Operations and hoteling, so that also includes transportation cards, laundry, those other things. The security officer, $48,272 for the total of $171,622. So it was baptism by fire, so to speak, but we learned so much. And as Ethan stated, in the event we are called again, we are much more prepared. Not that we didn't make mistakes and had things to learn, but I took a ton of notes and hopefully we'll be much more prepared should we be tasked again.
Supervisor Zestera.
Thank you, Mr.
I think we have,
Yeah.
a couple more.
I just wanted to ask, the volume is so loud that I can't even, it's quite loud. I don't know if there's anything that can be done on that or not, but it's hurting my ears, so.
Is that better
Yeah,
further
that's
away?
fine.
Okay. So, as you all know, for us, this was an emotional time. There was a lot going on. But now that we've had some time to kind of look at it, we talked today in department head, what was our end result? Our end result was, this is new, yeah, sorry. You saw it this afternoon. It was in the edits this afternoon. So our end result was we saved lives, and as he said, there was, as Renee said, there was a death in a tent outside the Amtrak station in Milwaukee. And so we know that this population across the state was struggling to be served. We also learned a lot. We learned a lot about how, not just with this particular shelter, Day by Day, or this nonprofit, with a lot of our providers, how can we provide better emergency management planning? We have a department devoted to that with 3 individuals. How can we do a better job with that? As Renee said, how to work together in a crisis. We do tabletop exercises, one of which is housing. The exercise that we use in Department Head is court tower goes offline, which is next to the new day-by-day shelter. How do we react? So this was a real-world crisis, and how do we improve our capabilities for the next emergency, because this isn't uncommon where a storm causes planning. AirVenture in 2021, and then now the shelter here in 2022 and early 23. And so what we did, and what Eric will walk through as the last component, is a hot wash. We did do an after-action review with Day by Day and a consultant in Eric's office.
Yeah, so just to wrap this up, what is a hot wash? A hot wash is an immediate after-action discussion to identify strengths and weaknesses to response. And an after-action review is the plan that tells us what we need to do, what resources and training we need to overcome those shortcomings in the future. This is a really common practice in my field, in our trainings, in our exercises, and even in our responses. We do this very frequently. I think you would probably see in your everyday life that this is something pretty common. Something major happens, you stop for a few minutes and you think about what went well and what can we do better next time. Like Ethan said, my office facilitated a hot wash in AAR for this on January 13th. We did bring in a neutral third-party consultant to conduct that, and it was done in 2 parts. One of the main reasons that this was really, really important to us is, you've heard us say before, typically the Red Cross does a lot of our sheltering. This is one where this fell entirely on the county, and that hasn't happened in the past. With the holidays, with the large deployment for the Red Cross, and their volunteer numbers are very low after COVID. So the Red Cross has less capability. So this was a chance for us to say, hey, we did this, let's make sure we document that, but then also to make sure that we document any issues or communication, coordination stuff we had with Day by Day too. So again, this was done in 2 sections. Hot wash first section included people from Day by Day, the county, and the city of Oshkosh. We focused on the core capability of organizational coordination, and we worked through the following questions. Were all of the partners notified in a timely fashion? Were all of the partners kept informed with accurate and timely status updates? Did the on-site and off-site partners coordinate operations effectively? Do we have plans and/or agreements that outline the responsibilities of our partnership? Were actions representative of a true sense of partnership? Were our messages coordinated and consistent? And what were our successes and what areas needed improvement? On a high level, corrective measures that we learned out of that hot wash. We need to develop a planning group utilizing community partners to develop a robust emergency plan at Day by Day. We need to consider using Red Cross plans and procedures. This plan should establish some trigger points to notify community partners of potential issues. We need to develop a public information structure to make sure that everyone is providing coordinated and consistent messaging. And we need to identify a chain of command and notify our community partners of what that chain of command looks like. Also, encouraged working with community partners, the Sheriff's Office, OPD, my office, and the Red Cross to provide staff training on topics such as searching, crisis intervention, incident command system, and public information. Oops. And then the second part of that hot wash was focused on our internal operations. So we were focused on operational coordination, we're the right people there, and we're our partners kept informed. And then mass care and sheltering. Like Ethan said, this is ESF 6, Emergency Support Function 6. This mass care and sheltering is part of our emergency response plan. Questions there, are we familiar with that plan? Do we have the checklists and the job sheets and the training we need? Was the management adequate, and were we properly equipped to operate that shelter? Corrective measures, we need to be more familiar with ESF 6 and our roles and responsibilities in that plan. We need to regularly review and update these plans, create an organizational chart and lines of succession for the people, and have those people trained to lead each function. We should create some job action sheets to be included in the plan, and plan for some drills and exercises to test those plans. We have some items that would be helpful for us, equipment documentation that we could utilize when we need to open shelters in the future. My office will continue to work with the Red Cross to identify shelter locations throughout the county, so we have a wide variety of options. We'll make sure that staff has incident command system training, and we practice that regularly. And at the county and the city, we continue to build a culture of emergency response among employees. And human resource will work to find a way to explain the other duties as assigned policy to our employees. Oh. Oh, not too far.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that there were designated government buildings that could house people. Do you have enough buildings? When I was living in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, a much smaller population, not as many government buildings. The combined population of Houghton, Michigan, Hancock, Michigan, and Michigan Technological University was about 25,000 total for the three. During a bridge emergency, when people could not cross the lift bridge, which separates one part of the Upper Peninsula to what is essentially 2.5 counties of an island, my church was put into service to house people. They had cots and blankets and tents, pillows. That probably wouldn't have worked very well for churches on Christmas Eve and Christmas. But are you using things other than county or government buildings for emergencies? And should we look into other things? And number two, these things happened right around Oshkosh. What if it happened in other northern parts? What if it happened in the Nanina, Menasha area of our county? Did we have things set up there, and did we need them? Thank you.
Absolutely. Extreme weather response, sheltering, whether it's heat or cooling, is something that our health department manages and keeps track of very regularly. If you go on their website, they have a list that they keep updated. That's one of the reasons that one of the ways that we found out that there was a lack and that we needed to open this shelter, when they were calling to make sure that their website was up to date and they could share out the information on these warming shelters, that a lot of these buildings, churches, schools, libraries, were going to be closed, not only for the holiday, but because of the winter storm that was coming. So we do as a heating and cooling, sheltering. We keep track of that list. The health department does that. In my office with the Red Cross, we do have shelters identified, or potential shelter locations identified throughout the county. Public, most of them would be public or nonprofit buildings. Churches are very common, town halls, places like that are just, that's kind of their function. But we certainly do have those identified and have contracts, MOUs with them throughout the county.
Supervisor Swan. Should be.
Thank you. This need for us to have taken over the shelter, would you say it's more of a staffing issue or budget funding related issue, or is it both? And do we expect that to happen again? Will it continue to be an issue?
We expected it's to be fixed, and we're working through some of those issues. But you have to understand, to Supervisor Powers' last question, what we were asking on that call on Monday was 110 hours of straight shelter. That is not what they do. So they didn't have the staff to do that. And so there was two components here. We had their normal staffing, they were short, whether it was college kids going home, COVID people out sick, people burned out. They had that issue, but we were asking for 110 straight hours of sheltering, which is
Okay.
not what they do.
So-
So there's two components there.
Right, so 171, 622 for 2 weeks, that you wouldn't see that over 52 weeks. What is the annual budget for this place? And forgive me if I should already know that through my own research, but is the funding primarily from the city? Is it donations? Are we contributing as a county? And what's the annual budget they have
Yeah,
there?
I hope they can answer. Is it 750-ish? 700? Old, we're talking old, right? So 750-ish old shelter, a little higher.
So you want to come to the mic?
620 is what she
Is
said.
that donations?
And we'll have them answer that in the next component, because I think that's worthwhile, how they'll
Okay.
do that. For what the county typically funds, the operational part of it, some of that is planned in our budget. Well, they needed to get capacity. We recognized part of that is they were hitting capacity of 25 people a night consistently. So part of that operational dollars was to create a new program to help increase their capacity. Your question was on staffing. That is resolved. We have faith that that's resolved. But the other component of it is what we had asked was 110 straight hours, and there was no way. It was hard for us with 1,100 employees. They have a dozen or a couple dozen. It wasn't going to be possible.
Okay, just one more. What the budget you said was 750 or 620? Is that donations or is that the annual
They'll
budget?
answer. I said it.
They're
and-
gonna.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That one. They can talk about their operations.
All right,
Going forward.
Thank you.
Supervisor Gabbard.
I think my questions are for you, Renee, because I think you're the person with the answers.
Okay, I'll
So-
stay back here.
Your count of 381 guests, any duplication there?
Yes,
So
duplication.
that somebody came, then they left, and then they came back?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we counted them every night.
Okay, and then, okay, that's fine. So that's a little bit skewed, but I understand why it would be skewed.
Yeah.
The hotels. You found enough hotels? And the reason I'm asking this is because I heard through the grapevine that people were placed at the place to be. Some people went there. Father Carr's place to be.
Oh.
So, did
not-
you get involved with that
Yeah.
during that time or not?
Yeah, I just had to glance at Molly because that wasn't ringing a bell for me. Not through us. I do want to give a shout out to Father Cars though, because that initial planning meeting, they came. They came to that meeting and said, what do you need from us? How do we help? And, absolutely, they brought us some meals too. But no, we did not transport anyone there or call them and say, hey, we're at capacity. Can you take people? Our work, meaning between Molly's staff and our staff, was all through Super 8, Motel 6. That's where we put our folks.
And you didn't run out of hotel space because it was a holiday, so you were able to place everybody?
We were.
If you needed to?
Correct.
Okay. And then just a clarity issue. I think perhaps, and this is not aimed at you or anything, I think perhaps in the human services budget going forward, we need a breakdown of who we contribute funds to for the nonprofits. I'm kind of familiar with it, but not really, and I want to see if we're covering enough of them.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So if you have 5 of them, could we do more by covering
Yeah.
6 or 8?
Do you mean, because there's a handful of agencies that in human services, I mean, it's not a secret, that we give money to. Advocap, Day by Day, Reach Counseling. So, I mean, it's all accounted for in our budget. But
Right.
are you asking that we highlight that more?
Break it down
Okay,
I think for the county board.
okay.
To see what goes where because I think that's an important issue for their budget. And I'm not sure, I know the Christine Ann Center was
Yeah,
one of those.
Christine Ann Center is one of them.
So I'd like to kind of see a better breakdown. Maybe we could do more.
Okay,
You know what I'm saying?
sure,
There's more pieces of the pie that we could distribute out.
sure.
And everything's in order now, right? So they're going to move to their new facility.
Yes, you'll hear all about that shortly.
Soon. I heard soon.
Yes.
I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Renee, were the expenses incurred for running this shelter, or maybe even Ethan can answer this, will this be reimbursed, county be reimbursed through the ARPA funds?
No. Although I can't tell you why. Could someone else here say why? I don't know why that is. Anybody?
Yeah, so the ARPA funds are now all in the Spirit Fund, because all of the ARPA funds were used on the wages. You passed that resolution. So there is not a current proposal through the commission to reimburse the general fund for these expenses.
Can we submit a resolution to have them reimburse that to the county?
To the commission, sure. That would go to the ARPA commission, that request.
Well, ARPA Commission, you've got notice. Thank you.
Supervisor Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, we're hearing about Oshkosh, and I know that Supervisor Powers did speak about the outer communities. How did places like Nina Menasha, Omro, how were those people taken care of during this storm?
Yeah, that's part of the reason we did some media interviews and a short press advisory on this. But we also did have consistently, I don't know how many, I know the agencies, we did have our sheriff's office pick somebody up from the Neenah area on a 911 call attempting to bring them to the shelter. We did have people from the north side of the county. I think we may have had one OMRO. But we certainly did have individuals living in their cars all over the county coming because they saw it or heard about it on the news. So the majority of the people were known or guests of Day by Day, but there were several where when they compared notes with staff they had not seen or not seen in quite a while who were domiciling anywhere, even out of county and came back. So yes, we did have instances where law enforcement were bringing people from all over the county.
Do the cities tend to help out in situations like this? So the churches in Neenah Menasha help with their citizens?
That's an Eric question.
Yeah, I kind of want to grab both your questions at the same time there. In these situations, so in an emergency response, it's not always the best use of our resources to set up multiple shelters, right? So, especially at a time where we are in the holidays and resources are really strapped, we're concerned about power outages, and we're concerned about the extreme cold, right? So a lot of times in my field, my profession, what we do is we look for one location that can kind of help us out. And this time, Day by Day was going to have noticed or have cared for a majority of the population we were looking to shelter. And I know that we reached out to the law enforcement agencies throughout the county, I believe even probably to Appleton, and let them know that we were open and we were available and willing to accept the residents. So in a normal time where we had a heating or a cooling shelter Tuesday morning in January, you probably certainly would have a church that would open up their doors in Neenah Menasha, Omro, Winneconne, and Oshkosh, or the libraries of those places are also really common. The police station, a lot of those places do open up their doors very regularly and throughout the county. So.
So y'all have just really good lines of communication with all of these areas. That's super to hear. Thank you.
Yep.
Supervisor Borchert.
Don't go away. What I heard you say before was that it's quite complicated to get all this stuff working and all the moving parts. Now, your answer to her tells me that maybe your position is you look at it, but Oshkosh is gonna be the hub for everything, and everything's kinda gotta come to Oshkosh?
No,
'Cause-
no, certainly not at all.
I mean, do you have plans of how you handle something in Fox Crossing? Do you have plans? Have you talked to the
Yeah, absolutely.
different utilities up there?
Absolutely.
And then that, I think, is a good way of doing it.
Yeah. So, just a little background for you. Over the last year, we worked with the Village of Fox Crossing to do some emergency preparedness trainings. This year, we're currently working with Nina Menasha. I actually met with the town of Winchester about 3 weeks ago to establish a connection between them and the Red Cross so we could set them up on our shelter list. So this is something we do throughout the county, and we do very, very regularly, especially our schools and our churches. Those are probably our most common locations. And when I talk, this happens on a daily basis. Opening your doors for somebody to come into air conditioning or to come into heat is different than feeding, caring, laundry, sheltering overnight. Those are completely different levels of care. So having a normal warming shelter during the day versus the operations that we did at this time are very different in logistics and complexity.
The type of incident that's taking place will determine what has to happen. You can't have a plan for everything, so you've got to, I guess, the biggest thing is you have your contacts in place. That's very important.
Exactly. And to touch on that, one of the things I think Ethan touched on earlier was we did have that miscommunication that Sunnyview was going to be where everybody's going to go, right? That was one of the things that we had to address very early. Again, in emergency management, we don't like to establish those locations until we know what the situation is and what's going to be the best fit. If there's a chemical release and everybody plans to go to Sunnyview, but it's at the railroad tracks right next to it, that's not the best place for us to send people. So we have to identify what the cause is and what the best situation is to send people each time. This time we were able to utilize day by day, and it worked really, really well for us.
Thank you.
Supervisor Bender.
Do we ask, what their last address was? I can see, we got the 32 tiny houses, now we got the day-by-day warming shelter open 365 days a year. My greatest fear is we're gonna get people from Outagamie County, Fond du Lac County, making their way here, using our facility that we built for our Winnebago County residents. And I basically, word gets out that we're providing a good service. It's not hard for them people to make it here, and I don't want to be the homeless capital of the Fox Valley by having the people from Outagamie County and Fond du Lac moving here when we built it for our residents.
We'll let Day by Day answer how they're going to do that in their new building. I will tell you that for the 3 weeks that the county ran it, we were not, if folks had ID, we looked at it, we documented, but we did not turn people away if they were not a county resident. Our philosophy, at least through that time, was if we could serve them, we would. I will tell you that at least initially through that first 4 days, there was rumor, and it turned out to only be a rumor, but I called John and Ethan in a panic and said, there's rumor that Outagamie County is sending a bus full of people down here, and we can't handle that, and what if they do show up? And that turned out not to be the case. Eric checked with his counterpart in Outagamie, but to your point, if word gets out that they're taking everybody and just show up, and but that was not the case for us. We did have a few out of county, but let's, Day by Day can respond to if that is a pattern for them and what their plan is moving forward. It did not become problematic for us during our time.
Yes, that would be my fear is we are providing a really nice facility that is open 365 days a year where they can stay the whole day. And when you're homeless, it's nothing to come to Oshkosh. You have nothing to pack, the bag of clothes that you have. So I just don't want to see where we built these nice facilities for Winnebago County residents, and I want to make sure that we're able to serve them and not taking Fond du Lac's homeless, Outagamie's homeless, and, all of a sudden we need more space because we're now the basically homeless capital of the Fox Valley.
Yeah, it's a good question. How are we managing that?
Supervisor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions. I have a comment that I'm proud to be part of Winnebago County. I'm proud of what you guys did. We can pick at all the little things, but I think what you did in a short time was unbelievable. And how the staff of the Winnebago County Health Department helped out, how everybody pitched in. You learned a lot from this. Sometimes you need an example to make something happen. But I mean, there was positive, all good stuff that came out of this. We learned a lot. A great team, and like I said, I'm proud that Winnebago County, I'm part of it, that can step up and be an example. I'm sure some of these other counties don't as many people that are, homeless or need things, so they probably don't have as big attention as we do here. But we took the challenge. People, we talk about the pay program just recently. Look at all those people that jumped up. With all the pay things coming on, they just came out. They forgot that what they're doing there, they wanted to contribute. So I commend you. I'd like to applaud you for that. Great job. Thank you.
Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I was going to actually say thank you for helping these people during this time. Though I did hear one thing, and I was curious. So Outagamie County has many great homeless shelters as well. Thinking of Pillars, it's awesome organization. And the comment was made that Director Rasmussen works with the counterpart in Outagamie. In situations like this, do we have any organization with other counties to kind of see, what would be best, especially for, like Neenah, Menasha, Fox Crossing, and even up into Appleton, right? We hit a little bit of Appleton. In Winnebago. Do we work with Outagamie County at all?
Yeah, absolutely. My office and the emergency management offices in Outagamie, Calumet, and actually throughout our region communicate very, very frequently during these things. I know I personally talked to most of the counterparts in the region. They were asking what we were doing and how to respond. And certainly when we look at shelters, not necessarily in this situation. There's a lot of dynamics in this one, certainly. If the Red Cross is assisting us, they will be coordinating throughout that whole group to figure out what the best options are. So we're not duplicating efforts and really kind of overutilizing resources. So yeah, we absolutely do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Supervisor Hintz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to ask for the people that were operating the shelter and whatnot. Was the form of identification you were checking of Wisconsin ID, or what did they have to declare who they were?
As far as I know, yes. I mean, I'm not aware that we had out of state folks, but I actually didn't check.
Well, no, I just needed the yes or no on that,
Yeah.
because going by what Mr. Binder was saying, I worked for 15 years. Doing registrations for elections. The DMV, you can go in today and say, my address has changed. They're just going to hand you your ID back. Say, it's all on the computer. It'll get sent to you, but we're not changing the ID because that costs too much. So they don't change IDs on the spot when you change your address. So we cannot go by the address that's on their ID. We can only trust them and say that they're saying they're from here without asking for other proof.
I
If
see.
they're homeless, they're not going to have mailing
Yeah.
proof like we had with elections.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to caution against the strictly using an ID
Oh, the
to
ID,
gauge where they're from.
Yeah, the other thing, back to your point, Supervisor Bender, that was happening, at least during the time we were running, is the Sheriff's Department, as folks were getting discharged from jail, which obviously jail doesn't have a county resident restriction, we're bringing folks over upon discharge because they didn't have anywhere to go. So that there's another management thing of, we weren't turning them away.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to also thank the Human Services and the county for the response they made. This fell at the worst time. It was Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, 12 days of Christmas, 8 days of Hanukkah. It couldn't have fallen at a worse time. And if somebody had shown up from Antigo County, whatever county Antigo is in, Langley County, I hope to heavens we wouldn't say, sorry, you don't live in Winnebago County, go freeze to death like they're doing in Milwaukee. Where they live should not matter when lives are at stake. Thank you.
Well, that's all we have, but we definitely want to thank you. You guys put in a lot of time, not just on your report here, but throughout the holidays, and took a lot out of your own time away from your own families. So on behalf of all of us, thank you very much. Before I forget, I would like to announce that Supervisor Gustafson, Supervisor Robinson, and Youngquist are all excused tonight. Next up is the Neighborhood Improvement Fund sub-grant recipient updates. We have Trevor Hunkin, I'm not sure on the last name, Executive Director, and Day by Day Warming Shelter, and Schwitters, President of the Board.
Yeah, we'll find out.
You might want to say your last name over, because I know I killed it, so.
I didn't even hear it, so, I'll go
You're
by just
lucky.
about anything, though. So, hi, I'm Trevor Fenrick. I'm the Executive Director for Solutions Recovery here in Oshkosh. I'm just really grateful to be here. Thank you all for having me and getting an opportunity to present on what we've been able to accomplish as a result of the Neighborhood Improvement Fund grant. A little bit about Solutions, and I'm also a person in long-term recovery. I want to disclose that a little bit. And I'm super grateful to be a part of an organization like Solutions. Sure. Simply because we get to serve people that are impacted by substance use, whatever that means. So it might be a family member, it might be a friend, it could be the person themselves struggles with substance use. That's our mission, and we stay really mission specific at Solutions. So I want to give you a little bit of an idea of what we do at Solutions, and specifically within our housing program. But that's our mission. And one thing too is that we don't do this by ourselves. Like, Solutions is not like an island of where people find recovery or where they get recovered or anything like that. We work alongside other systems, and over the last couple of years, we've been able to start doing that really well, where we've become more of a professional organization. We came from a grassroots, completely volunteer-run organization, started in 2007, and then we just most recently launched a 24/7 staffed program that provides peer support for individuals and for families that are impacted by substance use. So we work alongside that primary care model. So individuals typically go to treatment first before they come to us in our housing program. But we may also see them on the other side of that, like when they're first looking for resources, first looking at making that attempt into recovery. So we've been able to do a lot and accomplish a lot with that through our newest program. But for our housing program, typically we see people after they've made that initial start into recovery. Not always, but typically. And as you can see, it helps the chances of them succeeding if they do that first. Not always. Some people don't need primary treatment first. Some people can come to us right from the street or maybe from a secured facility. But typically this model, and it's a unique model because at Solutions, we not only do the housing piece, but there's a recovery community around us. And that's really unique for what we do. People come to our housing program, and it's basically a time for them to transform their lives. So for our sober living program, we're the only women's sober living provider in Oshkosh. There are some in Neenah, and then we also last year started a men's program, or absorbed a men's program. And basically sober living is like time to reset, restart, start over and work towards building life skills and their life. We work with people on financial independence. We work on healthy boundary setting, relationships, and building a strong recovery foundation so that they can become self-sustainable in society, in addition to being gainfully employed, or at least employed to where they can get to the point of supporting themselves. Many times individuals come to us in poverty, and all of our graduates who are successful within the program become employed and above the poverty level. And at Solutions, we have a variety of support options, and that's what's really cool about the model that we have, is we're able to support individuals and get to see people come in at their lowest and transform their lives. So these are some of the other things we work on. We also have a really unique child care visitation program. Typically what happens when people go to treatment is they may get estranged from their children for a period of time, and we're able to kind of facilitate that soft start back into them becoming part of their kids' lives again. And that's unique to our program. It's not offered in many other programs that we're aware of in the area. So a big portion of this grant, the Neighborhood Improvement Fund grant, has allowed us to expand. So we've been able to get the next step going for individuals in their recovery journey. So the first 6 months, they focus a lot and have a lot of accountability. And then we're able to provide another place for them to go, safe, supportive, and affordable for their recovery journey. A lot of times when individuals come to us, they have a record, maybe a criminal record or poor rental history. So we remove some of those barriers for individuals that come into us, and we're able to provide them with that housing which they may not otherwise be to have access to. So far with the Neighborhood Improvement Fund grant, we've been able to purchase 4 homes. We increased that access for graduates and people successful in our program. We've been able to build our capacity from 18 beds to 38 beds. And we've most recently submitted a letter of intent to purchase the Christine Ann facility to continue growing and have more bed availability in Winnebago County. And this is one of our graduates. I can let you read that if you'd like. And again, I'm really grateful that you allowed us to get this grant and that we are able to make such an impact in the lives of the individuals that we serve, the families that we serve. It's really something special to see the transformations that I get to see on a daily basis, see people change their lives and do something better, you know. And I'm grateful for Solutions as an organization, because that's how I got started. You know, that's where my journey started. It gave me a purpose. It gave me an opportunity to give back in the community, and I've been afforded a lot of opportunities through that to become a better person today and a better citizen of Winnebago County. So I just really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you, and I can take questions now. Yeah.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trevor, the 4 homes that you purchased, are these individual family homes or group homes? If they're individuals, it's sort of like Habitat for Humanity, putting people in trouble into a home they can afford?
We have a mixture. So we have some homes that are single-family homes. The primary program, the 6-month initial, are typically duplexes. Just because of zoning, we're able to fit 6 to 8 individuals in a home, and that's kind of how they live in the first 6 months. The transitional homes after that, so we have a family renting out one of our units, so a family and their children, and they were successful in our program. And then we also have a roommate living arrangement in one of our other homes. That's a duplex.
Supervisor Sestero.
Oops, I'm sorry, I pushed done.
Pardon?
Thank you for the presentation. What prevention activities do you or anyone else do on the other end of things as far as educating young people on the importance of sobriety?
Sure. So Solution specifically, we work with the Boys and Girls Club. We facilitate a group there to process through different things from a substance use and prevention perspective. Many of our staff members go into the high school. I've actually myself gone with the drug court, the Winnebago County Drug Court team, as I'm a graduate of that program. So we go in to the schools a couple times per year and talk about our experience with substances and a prevention standpoint. We were also recently asked to join the DARE board here in Oshkosh, so that's another area that we're looking at getting involved in from a prevention standpoint.
And if I may, one other question. What is one thing that our community promotes that is hurting sobriety? If you could name one thing.
I wasn't prepared for a question like that. That you promote, and I
Just want to know.
I don't have a lot of experience with what you promote that hurts sobriety, honestly. We live in Wisconsin, I will say that. And that's where we are. However, like Winnebago County, I mean, we are decades ahead some of our counterparts, where we're progressive, we're doing a really good job of meeting people where they are and moving forward to help meet the needs and find those windows of opportunity to help people. So I just, I look at some of my counterparts across the nation, and they're years behind where we are as a county as far as supporting programs that help people.
Okay.
Supervisor Gabbard.
I'll start out complimenting you. I think we have the right guy in the right position for this organization. You have a plan, you stick to it, you're helping people better themselves and be a contributing member of society. I do appreciate that, because that is one of my toughest things to grasp, that we just don't get the people back to where they can be. So I have a couple questions. These homes, and I guess I'll just use that in general. I caught the little word that you said, they rent. So apparently,
I didn't mean to say that.
you didn't mean to say that.
No, they pay program fees. They're not renters.
They're not renters.
No.
And how long do you allow them? And I think I want to do the home part. The duplexes, I understand that. How long can a person rent a home that's in the Solutions Recovery Program?
So our transitional past primary is a really new program. The idea is for them to get enough time away from their old record, so maybe an eviction, maybe build their credit history, and we work really closely with some partners in our area to help them build that financial stability, so they can hopefully, and this is kind of a cool thing with all of this neighborhood improvement fund grant stuff, is like we can have a conversation with Habitat for Humanity and see, will some of our individuals or participants be able to move into a home like that? Perhaps. Is that something that they can start working towards? Or many times it's just getting that enough time away from their past where people are willing to give them a shot. I was really lucky that a landlord gave me a shot at 6 months sober and bad history, and so I was really grateful for that. But we all know what the housing market looks like today, and how difficult it is for anyone to find a home, much less if you have some of those barriers presented to you. So I would say, we've got the 6 months. Ideally, from a program perspective, we would really like to see maybe a maximum of 18 months to 2 years for them to kind of get back on track and give that opportunity to the next person.
And then do you have, I guess I'll say members, I don't know how to say that correctly. Do you have people that are in this recovery program that are there for the long term? They come back after they've graduated the process that you provide, but they still can come back for seminars, meetings, such like that?
Absolutely, and that's what I'm smiling because that's what's unique to our model. And I can't say that it doesn't happen anywhere else, but I'm really grateful that we have the model that we do where we've got the homes right alongside a recovery community center. So that's where recovery happens in our area. There's thousands of individuals in recovery in this area that are doing really well, that have rebuilt their lives. And many of them come from housing programs similar to ours and our housing program. And they continue to show up. I've got staff members that are all in recovery, all mostly a product of our system. We've got lived experience on our board of directors, which is really important for me, obviously, as a person in recovery, to have that voice and to make sure that we're really mission driven and mission specific, and we continue to serve the individuals that we're there to serve.
Okay, and then just a quick note, budget wise, what is your budget and where do you get your funding?
Sure. Okay. I'll talk just because I briefed over it earlier today. And I just want to talk from when I got involved in the organization as a volunteer. In 2016, our budget was $120,000, and this year we're projected to be around $1.1 million in operating budget. And last year in January, I had 4 staff members, and now we have just about 20. So we've expanded a lot. There is a need there. And so there's a few different revenue or income streams that we see. Some are donations. Private foundations are a big one. We do receive some county funding through grants, through pass-through grants. And otherwise we have earned income from our sober living program, and we're looking to expand on that a little bit as well because we have some other contracts that we have as well. So it's diverse, and we're continuing to build that. But we've kind of tripled our budget year over year for the last few years. So it's been a lot of growth, which has been really cool to see that we're able to meet the needs. And we went through a strategic planning process last year that's going to hopefully flush out some stabilization and allow us to kind of see where we're at with all of those income streams and if we need to make any adjustments.
And finally, thank you for what you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question refers to your 4th bullet point on the neighborhood improvement at a glance page. That states that you've submitted a letter of intent to purchase the Christine Ann Center. Some of the funding for the Christine Ann Center's new facility is, shall I say, somewhat in jeopardy. How does that affect your letter of intent?
I can speak from our letter of intent and say that we are proceeding forward and doing our, how do I want to say this? We're continuing our efforts to hopefully one day secure that facility. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't mean that we can't expand somewhere else or do housing somewhere else. But that building is really perfect for what we would like to use it for in many ways. And it's a really good deal for our organization. It's in a really good neighborhood. And it would be, we would have a lot of support for that. So we're continuing on as is for now, and we'll see kind of how things shake out, is what I would say. The letter of intent is contingent on them obviously moving. So if for some reason they aren't able to do that, we just buy a different house or a different facility is what we would do in that instance.
Are there any terms in your letter of intent time-wise? I mean, is that good for a year, 2 years?
The letter of intent was signed last week, and it gives us 6 months to draft an offer to purchase if we move forward.
Okay, or you can extend it if needed.
If needed, correct.
Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Flom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trevor, at the last Safe Streets meeting, you mentioned something that I thought was pretty profound, and it's about the peer-to-peer program that you guys are going to start in the county jail with the sheriff's office. And that's when somebody is looking for recovery, we have a very narrow window of opportunity to get through to them. And the county jail is going to be one of those places. So if this program, do you kind of envision, and apologies if you've already answered this, moving through kind of a series of steps, which I see here, from meeting somebody who's at rock bottom in the county jail to getting them into housing? Is that what you envision going forward?
I would like to clarify a little bit. So we're already in the jail.
Okay.
What is kind of moving forward with the Safe Streets initiative or that program is that they're going to contract a position with us. Right. But we've been in the jail since September, and they have been one of our strongest community partners. We've been able to reach a lot of individuals. About 50% of our contacts happen at the county jail. And yes, that's exactly what has happened is we see these people at rock bottom. Like full disclosure, like I was that rock bottom in county jail, and like given the opportunity to go to treatment, go to drug court, and restart my life, and like here I am, you know. So with that, that's exactly what happened. We'll sometimes make those referrals to a treatment, and we work really closely with Human Services. They do the assessments and determine the level of care necessary for these individuals that we see, and so perhaps they may go to residential treatment first, and sometimes they come directly to us. And yeah, that's exactly what happens is they start there, and we get to help them navigate through that process and kind of hold their hand through that process and see them come out the other side. And we've had some really, really good successes with that so far in the 7 months that we've been doing it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Supervisor Hran.
Thank you. I'm just curious as to your program. Is it like a 12-step program? I've got family members who've been through that and have been successful.
So the recovery community in our areas works specifically with 12 steps. Our peer response team and our programming is holistic. So we don't focus necessarily on just one aspect because it takes the mental, physical, and spiritual aspects to work through this stuff. So those are all offerings within the recovery community, but all of our programming is not necessarily 12-step based. Solutions Recovery as an organization is rooted very deeply in the 12 steps, and that's what we were born from back in 2007. Okay. So we kind of carry that through. But as an organization, we can't affiliate, so to speak.
Okay. Super. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Defferting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was a question I just thought of in regards to the Christine Ann Center. So let's say, for instance, the purchase does go through. And do you have, is this something that you and your board will be looking at in the future in regards to just the financial sustainability for that building? Basically, you know, this grant is going to run out one way or another. So will you have something put in place where you are going to be financially sustainable once that grant runs out?
That's a really good question. So financial stability is something that I've been thinking through on the get-go of this grant. We use this grant to purchase homes, and those homes earn income for us. So that's one piece of the homes that we've already purchased. We don't have a mortgage payment on them. We don't have to pay rents. We were leasing homes in the past. So those services that we're performing, we get earned income from, and we're not paying some of those occupancy, that we're not paying the occupancy on it. Christine Ann, I would say what we have officially on paper right now is that it would be used for more transitional living, and that would help support it. Well, the business model that we presented and came up with would support and help bring more income into the organization than if we didn't have it.
Okay, that's good to know. That's very good to know. The other thing too is, and I know that you spoke with me about this over the phone a couple of days ago, but if you could kind of reiterate for the board here, being a recovery coach is can be a very mentally demanding task. It's and so what kind of things do you have for your recovery coaches in regards to their own mental health?
Sure. Yeah, I would like to think that we provide a progressive workplace that meets the needs of our employees, and knowing that the individuals that we serve can take a toll on us just in general. Working with people can take a toll on you. Working in healthcare or mental health of any sort can do that. So we're very cognizant of that. We have weekly staffing with all of our staff and their supervisor. We have an open door policy that we work really closely with our staff, and we're able also, because we're in recovery, we're able to kind of identify where each other is at and notice certain things, and that can really be helpful in determining, well, perhaps maybe this person needs a little bit of time off or time away, and it's not a punishment. It's say, hey, you've been working a lot with this individual in particular, and again, we've got that diverse team that maybe somebody else can fill in and take over and help out. But we monitor that very closely, and we take the recovery and mental health, physical health very, very seriously at Solutions. Just from a employer and organization service provider standpoint, we think that's really important. So, and a lot of it is just kind of based on our experience. I can relate it back to my own experience working in mental health care for about 5 years, and working many hours, and having that support of peers around me, it makes a really big difference. So that's one aspect of it, and then also just gauging and checking in with people where they're at, and staying on top of that and providing that direct supervision so they have that time to process through things. And then we also work with other agencies that provide counseling as well, just in case we need to refer out if we're not able to handle something in-house.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Star.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thank you, Trevor, for what you do. And I asked before what activities are promoted in our community that could hurt sobriety. I'm just going to ask, do you think cannabis should be legalized? Thank you.
So I would consider that to be an outside issue outside of recovery. I can't really speak on that I can't speak on that right now. We can talk after, but I couldn't speak on public record and say that we have an opinion on this one way or another as an organization, especially. I think everybody has their own personal opinions, but I wouldn't be able to comment on that right now.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would this be an appropriate point to answer or speak to Vice Chairman Fari's question about the Christine Ann Center?
You can speak to it on it. I don't know what you're going to speak to on.
Well, okay, you can
Are
stop me.
gonna have
You can stop
dialogue
me if
back and
it's.
forth?
You can stop me if it's not worthwhile.
Okay, if it's not,
I did take
it's
it
going to be dialogue back and forth. I'm going to say no because we have a speaker up here. So, but if you're going to talk about his thing, then that's fine.
The Christine Ann Center and Solutions are both housing initiatives.
Correct.
And Vice Chairman Fari did mention that possibly some of the funding for Christine Ann is in jeopardy. I took a tour of Christine Ann last week, both the current house that's going to go to Solutions probably, and the beach house next door. I did get the chance to see one of the apartments in the beach house or beach building, whatever that's called, which actually was lovely. It was very well done. They have great plans. Their hope is to, I believe, take possession of the beach building by February of 2024. And I would hope that we could support both Solutions and Christine Ann as housing initiatives. Thank you.
I'm just going to answer somewhat on that, but I'm not going to go into a lot. When we voted to take the ARPA money and put it into the Spirit Fund, there was a motion made and amendment made to it that the nonprofit be taken out of it, and it passed by the board, and that's where we sit right now until something else comes up or whatever. That's where it sits right now. Thank you. Supervisor Bender.
Just curious, the UW Extension's got a program called Rent Smart. Do you ever use them?
We do refer out to RentSmart, not necessarily specifically for just the residents. Sometimes it's across the board. It's one of the programs that we promote to our residents and just program participants in general, because it can definitely give them benefits of going through that program and being connected with landlords that may work with them if they work through that program.
Thanks.
See any other questions? I thank you very much. It's been really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is day-by-day warming shelter. Commissioner Withers, president of the board. And her colleagues.
Good evening. I am Molly Yatzelbutz. I am the executive director of the Day by Day Shelter, and I will be speaking on behalf of our organization tonight. We have Jason Havlick, who is the chairperson of our facilities committee. So we're going to be talking about that neighborhood improvement plan grant that allowed us to build the new shelter that has been discussed, the new 365-day shelter. Jason headed that committee for us. Gretchen Withers is our board president and has been for 3 years. So Gretchen and I came on to Day by Day in our current positions at about the same time. So the last 3 years, you can imagine, have been crisis, and more crisis. But I think we're ending that era here at the shelter. Joanne Noe Cross is our board secretary and also chairs our facilities committee. So all of them are here. Finance committee, and all of them are here to answer any questions if it were to arise as well. So if we go back to the our mission of the Day by Day shelter, we got rid of the warming part as of this month. With moving into our new 365-day shelter, we will become a shelter and not just a warming shelter. We collaboratively provide temporary shelter, individualized services, and opportunities for self-sufficiency to empower the most vulnerable adults in our community. Day by Day was established in 2011. Again, grassroots, as Trevor talked about with his organization as well. We were put in the basement of St. Peter's Church, now Most Blessed Sacrament, with a 6-month temporary use permit that allowed Day by Day to operate out of that church basement for 6 months. 12 and a half years later, we will finally have our own permanent residence. So each and every year, the city has provided us an extension to that temporary use permit that they've just renewed on our behalf, which we're very thankful for. We're also very thankful for Most Blessed Sacrament for letting us remain in the church basement for as long as we have. But as you can imagine, in 12 and a half years, we have seen a tremendous change in our organization, the people we serve, and then I can speak on behalf of the last 3 years, specifically that COVID exacerbated our homeless community here in Winnebago County. For this first summer that I actually came on board, which was June of 2020, we were one of two, us and the Christine Ann Center organizations in the city that were open every single day, and people needed us, and we were there. And so a lot of really good things came out of that as well. We enhanced our programming. We were able to hire more staff because we needed to, and then we did start working with the county on some of the motel voucher programs and things like that that were absolutely necessary as well, as COVID continued to run rampant through the shelter. But again, we were one of the only places that were open. So just to give you a little, some statistics on the shelter, and these are pretty specific to, we technically call our operating hours or our operating manual, we do everything by seasons. So prior to this past April 15th, which was just a few weeks ago, we were a 6-month temporary use shelter, meaning that we opened our doors on October 15th for overnight shelter, and we closed our doors on April 15th. So that was that 6-month temporary use permit that allowed us to do that. When COVID hit, we decided that we were going to be a full year shelter, but again, we were not allowed to do the overnight services. That's where that emergency shelter was able to provide things that we weren't. We are only able to provide overnight services from October to April from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. each day. That is what our temporary use permit allows us to do. When COVID hit and we saw an opportunity that our community needed us and our homeless community members needed us, we ramped up our daytime programming, which now we just do, because of course it wasn't something that we could let go. So in June of 2020, and I'll get into that a little bit more, we added daytime programming with staff that provide people who are in a situation of homelessness, obviously, to come into our facility all during the day and work with our staff one-on-one, small groups. Trevor's group from Solutions comes and helps. We have about 35 to 40 community partners that are constantly working with us to provide those ongoing programs. So just to give you a little bit, again, some statistics, we have provided over 50,000 nights of shelter and warm meals in our first 12 seasons. We wash and dry approximately 4,500 loads of laundry per season. That's between October and April. I would guesstimate we do about 6,000 loads of laundry per year because in the summer we also allow people to come in during the day and we help that with that service. Day by Day provides on average, we serve about 200 unique individuals per that 6-month season. So October to April every year, at least for the last 3 to 4 years, we're seeing about 200 unique individuals. We have about 450 plus volunteer hours per month with over 200 people who come in to the shelter each month and provide volunteer services, whether that be helping with laundry, meals, just general hospitality and those type of things. Approximately 3,000 unique community members have donated over $3 million to support Day by Day operations since its inception 12 years ago. So we are highly funded through donations. I think that was a question before. We do receive, like Trevor, very close to Trevor's same budget type thing. We write a lot of grants privately, locally, but a lot of our stuff comes from just people being extremely generous, extremely committed to Day by Day and the mission we serve, and opening their wallets to give us money. We receive an average of $10,000 per month of in-kind donations. That includes laundry soap, paper towel, coffee, clothing, cleaning supplies, and much more. Like I said, our community is extremely generous to Day by Day. So in June of 2020, we started what's called our Gateways to Goals program, and this is where we really started focusing in on how can we help people achieve self-sufficiency? How can we help them move out of homelessness faster, right? And I think you guys all talked about, our shelter is full. It is full every night. It will be full. Our new shelter will be full. And I just told you we've served over 200 people in the last 6 months. So we will continue to serve those people, but how do we answer how do we help achieve self-sufficiency, right? We don't ask any questions, so going back to some of those questions as well, We are an emergency shelter. We turn away no one other than due to capacity. So, of course, over the last 12 years, if you've heard that we've turned away people, we have turned away people because we only have 25 beds. So we can only shelter 25 people, again, because of our location and temporary use permit. Our new shelter will allow us to serve 50 people per night. Staffing-wise, budget-wise, all of those things, that is about what we can handle. You know, there's an enormous amount of responsibility and everything that goes along with housing 50 people who are in crisis every single night in a congregate living space. And we do it with 2 people per 8-hour shift. So, so we run a very, very lean budget with the amount of people that we help and serve in this community. So our Gateways to Goals, like I said, was established in June of 2020. There are 9 areas of programming that when a person comes in, we do require everybody to do an intake. So as they enter our facility, they do an intake that's one-on-one done with our team so we can get to know them. You know, how long have they been sleeping on couches? What led them to homelessness? You know, all kinds of questions. We've enhanced that intake. I'm super proud of it right now. We've added a mental health component, an AODA component. We've added a nurse practitioner student who comes in and meets with them based on that intake. We've added just a lot of really strategic work focused around that intake so that we can get to know better, we can get to know people better, find out what the issues are and how we can program our programming to help support them as much as possible. So you can see we help them with just basic needs, which of course everybody needs, housing, health and wellness, employment, financial stability, sobriety, social connectedness, transportation, and education. So about 88% of the people who use day-by-day shelter are working towards one of these 9 goals at any given time. So just to give you some statistics of our last, so season 12, which technically, again, should have ended 2 weeks ago, didn't end because we filed for that extension of the temporary use permit. We are now in our current location until May 15th, until we move into our new facility. We had over 30 individuals find housing. 40% of the people who utilized us in the last 6 months were employed. Our day-by-day guests actually volunteer out in the community. They serviced over 260 hours. 4 guests fulfilled their Rent Smart certification. We teach those classes right on site. We adopted a highway. We have our guests do highway cleanups each and every month. They participated in over 40 hours of prayer groups. They accomplished over 75 hours of dual diagnosis and AOD. That's mental health and AODA support right on site. They participated in nearly 200 hours of one-on-one counseling. We added public health vaccination clinics, and we had 6 individuals who were referred directly into long-term care programs. That means we found 6 individuals in the last 6 months who were actually paying for support through other organizations and service care lines and things like that that were living on the street that didn't even know they had those options available to them. And we were able to get them into their appropriate levels of care, which has been outstanding. So the Neighborhood Improvement Plan grant. So that's the grant that the $10.5 million. Again, thank you to Winnebago County, Lindsay, that John, the whole team that really worked hard on helping multiple organizations. I mean, there are 5 or 6 of us that are really, as Trevor just alluded to, are really benefiting from that grant. And so what that grant allowed us to do or helped us do is actually construct the building. So construct the new building. So some of the current challenges that we faced in the basement of Most Blessed Sacrament were that we were, of course, limited to that 25 guests per night. Our overnight services, like I talked about, were limited to 6 months per year. We lost contact with people from April to October a lot of times. We have street outreach. We have a social worker on site. Many of those staff members spent their summer just going around Winnebago County trying to find people that were right at the cusp of getting housing, and then then April 15th came, and where did they go? And so we spent a lot of our summer just chasing people down. Our shelter currently has no space for confidential conversations, so you can see from some of the pictures, that bottom right picture is our staff office. Currently, right now, there are 5 full-time staff people and a service dog who work out of that office. There's nowhere for anybody to go. We are a 2-story building, so at this time we are non-ADA compliant. At any given night, we have at least 2 to 3 people who are using walkers or wheelchairs, those type of things. Our mattresses are currently on the floor, therefore making it very difficult for people to get on and off the floor. We have about a 32-week pregnant individual right now, so that becomes extremely difficult. Really, we just outgrown the space. Our donation is located off-site, so we have to drive across town to the outlet mall area to pick up donations. All of that has to be heavily coordinated in the winter when laundry detergent and things like that start to freeze. How many days do we have for it to thaw in the current shelter before we need to use it? All of that was very strategic in the last 12 years, getting our donations back and forth. We only have one toilet facility right now for men, all the men who use the shelter. Obviously a very difficult thing. We have no place to store our clothing and hygiene items, which is a very important part of running the shelter. At this time, our kitchen usage is very limited. Everything needs to be done off-site, and then all the meals need to be brought in. And then our current shelter, for the first 12 years had limited, zero actually, safety and security. In the last 4 months, we've really enhanced that just temporarily at the shelter, just to help with some of the things. But our new facility is safe and secure, which is wonderful for all who use it. So we call our project Building Hope. We named our campaign a year ago when Day by Day went public with our campaign that we were going to raise $5.5 million to support not only the building of the shelter, but also to help sustain operations and long-term sustainability of the shelter. So our campaign is called Building Hope. So you'll see that referenced a lot in the community in the next month as we open our new shelter. And so some of the things that Building Hope provides our community is that we can serve now 50 people per night, so we doubled our capacity. We also doubled our service nights, so we will be year-round, 365 days a year. That also includes all holidays. Homeless community members will have continuity in services, so now we don't have that gap. Hopefully we won't be chasing people down all summer. The shelter will be 1-story and accessible. We are ADA compliant, including having an ADA restroom and shower facility. Beds are raised off the floor, and all their personal storage is stored underneath, which is very nice. We have an operational kitchen. We have ample storage space for the storage of donations, private meeting areas, and then we also have spaces for all of our community partners to do their programming. So like we talked about, all that great counseling, classes, Rent Smart, financial stability, all of those things that we're working through. We're going to have those classes, again, right on site between the hours of 8 and 5 during the day. We have additional showers, so we have 7 total showers. We have bathroom facilities, adequate bathroom facilities. We have laundry rooms, so for those 6,000 loads of wash, we now have 8 working units. And so we're really excited about that. And the facility is properly secured, like I said, for the safety of all who enter. The kitchen is the lower left-hand corner. That just shows we have warming racks, a stove. The ADA bathroom is the next photo. The wash machines are the next photo. John and I are in the congregate bed space. The beds are delivered tomorrow. Another really great thing about this project is that we tried to keep all of our vendors very local. We wanted to give back to the community and county that has helped us and served us so well. So all of the purchases that we made for the new shelter, if not donated, many of our things are donated. Like those washers and dryers came right from Alliance Laundry, which was so nice. We purchased locally. So the 52 beds that are coming from Berlin tomorrow, who knew that Berlin had a facility that builds congregate living beds? But they do. So we kept everything local. So we're really, really appreciative to all of those who supported the project. These are just some of the renderings of the new shelter. If you haven't driven by it, please do. Our community open house, which you are all welcome to attend, is next Thursday, May 11th, from 4 to 7 p.m. There'll be a ribbon cutting at 5:30, and so we hope that you'll be able to attend and enjoy a tour. Just some of the renderings, the outside you can see, we designed an outdoor smoking patio that no longer has to be supervised by a staff member each night. You can see the congregate bed spaces, the back, the secured entrance for staff and volunteer, and then where this lady is standing right here in the front is our front desk area with a de-escalation / quiet room, and then that private room for intakes, which I will tell you, those two, let's just say those 2 rooms and the 8 washers and dryers will be game changers for our staff. Absolute game changers. Questions?
Supervisor Hintz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to say I go way back with this because I don't know if you guys recognize me, but I was on the City Plan Commission when you came through with this. And we had all those great discussions with the neighbors.
Yes.
Just a couple of questions on some of the things we covered back then. Are you still going to have, is this only basically open for people to come in and then you lock the doors at, I think it was like 8 o'clock p.m.?
That's
and
correct.
They're inside all night long?
That's correct. So we have
Except
an 8
for if they go out
p.m.
to have a
curfew.
cigarette.
Yeah, so that smoking space is connected to our building too, so there'll still be smoke breaks, so we'll all go out together, but it's secured, so they don't actually leave. Right now, we have to walk down to the end of the street and smoke at the corner of Pearl and the Most Blessed Sacrament parking lot. So this is connected to the building. So yes, we'll still have scheduled smoke breaks. We do have an 8 p.m. curfew, that's correct. So our hours are still the same. It's 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. for the emergency overnight shelter. Then once 8 a.m. starts, about approximately 8 to 4:30 is when we run those daytime programs.
So during the daytime is when you would be doing the counseling and helping people with bettering themselves, basically?
That's correct.
Okay, great. And I know one of the things that one of the plan commissioners really was pushing on hard with you guys was USB ports on the outside, by the benches that you have outside, because you basically have everybody outside during the day, and Wi-Fi access for people that were around the building during the day. I was just curious if you kept up with any of that.
Wi-Fi is in, USB, we only have about 2 outlets right now in our current space. There's probably about 150 outlets in our new, and USB ports, we actually get massive donations from Fort Imprint that we can just put into those outlets. So yes, there'll be plenty of all of that.
Does that include on those benches out by your front door where people might be sitting during the day or not? Because I know that was one of the things that we had asked about because of helping people who might maybe, inadvertently
I do believe there are some outlets outside, but I know inside they all actually get a private outlet by their beds each night.
Okay, that's great. Sounds like you took a lot of the stuff that we were talking about and moved forward with it and kept to your plan. So, great job on this.
Thank you.
Supervisor Zelmer.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. What assurances could you give the community of Oshkosh that those folks that are at the shelter will use appropriate behavior if they're outside the shelter, walking maybe around? I ask that because a couple people have touched base with me that they don't know if these folks will integrate very well. There's a lot of activities over there, Waterfest. The amphitheater is used for other things also. Anything in your plans that these folks will be up and up?
I can't give you any assurance as to what they do outside the shelter because we serve adults 8 to 18 and over, and I can't speak for them as to what they do when they're outside the shelter.
Could you talk to them and say, hey, use appropriate behavior, we don't want to have any problems? Could you do that, please?
Yes, but we are an emergency overnight shelter, so we provide shelter space for those who are in crisis from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m., right, 365 days a year. What people choose to do on their off time is their off time. We know for situations like you were addressing, people have been in those areas for far longer than Day by Day has been around. So again, they're adults and we do absolutely what we can while they're in the shelter, but they are adults.
Supervisor Defferding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is pretty much the same question that I gave Trevor from Solutions Recovery. This is you have a lot of gears turning right now, and you have a lot of things being set in motion, and so I'm sure that there's you're kind of focusing on getting this open and starting this new phase for Day by Day. As being county board supervisors, we all know that facilities always need maintenance and repair after 10, 15 years, and they can get pretty expensive and oftentimes they get over budget. Does your organization have something in place so that you're at least setting aside money so that you're able to afford the maintenance of that facility?
So obviously, long-term sustainability was part of our capital campaign. Day by Day has also been putting away money long before we even put the shovel in the ground for long-term sustainability as well, and for this construction project. We are asking for, John and I actually just chatted about this a little bit last week, for some, support that we can utilize. For example, the Housing Authority had been plowing that lot for the last 12 years when it sat empty. So, could they still plow the lot? We did put into place in our current budget that will begin on July 1st, opportunities for our guests to actually apply for facility jobs and cleaning jobs at our shelter, where they will be supervised by us and work under us. And that will include lawn and maintenance and things like that. And we've already had, I think, 10 applicants. And we're only going to be able to hire 3 or 4. So I think that job's going to be very competitive. I think our guests really want to help and give back. So yeah, there's maybe facilities or finance can speak to more of that if I'm not being descriptive enough, but that's just part of our operating budget now. So kind of to piggyback what Trevor said, when these organizations grow and the needs are getting greater and greater, you can no longer work on the same operating budget that you had 4 years ago. So our budget has also grown.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just looking at this and I was like, yeah, that's a lot of windows there. Eventually 10, 15 years from now, you're going to have to replace them. That could cost a lot of money. So, as like I said with Trevor at Solutions Recovery, the grant will eventually run out. And so as long as you have something set aside where you're able to be prepared for that in the long run, that's important.
Yeah, thank you.
Supervisor Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you publish your budget? Could you give us just an overview of general numbers and where you are and what your needs are?
Sure.
going
So
forward?
I can go back again to the last 3 years. When I first started, we were around 450,000. Then once COVID hit and we added that daytime programming, we went up to around 590. This past year with adding additional staff. So during COVID, there were only about 4 of us who worked all the time. We now are up to 22. We have 16 advocates, so those who work in the shelter from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m., and then there are 6 of us on the administrative team. So as we just kind of talked about with adding, doubling our capacity, doubling the nights we're open, going to our own facility, things like dumpsters and all of those things that we've had to purchase in the last few weeks. We're going to be just shy of that $1 million as well, operating annually per year.
And the $5.5 million that you're campaigning for, is that going to be an annual need or not really? It doesn't sound like it. So
Correct.
you're about $1 million a year.
Correct.
And so would you say that you're at sustainability right now with that going forward? And,
So the last 2 years, we've raised, our operating was only about 600,000, and we were able to raise, we were able to raise more than what we needed to operate. So we're
And
hoping that will continue.
Your funding sources are primarily private donations?
It is primarily private donations, that's correct.
And the city or the city doesn't contribute funds to you?
Yep, so I get, we do apply for CBDG funding. This year, for our past fiscal year, the 2022 to 2023, we received $15,000 in support to help cover part of a salary of a on-site social worker. Prior to COVID, Bill and I have had to have discussions the last 3 years because of COVID, motel vouchers, and then now this last 4 months of motel vouchers as well. But prior to COVID, the county's grant was around $5,000 per year.
Okay. And then your participation in that $10.5 million, was that for the construction of the building primarily?
Correct. Our portion of the neighborhood improvement plan grant was for the construction of the building.
And what did that cost roughly to do that?
3.5.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you give the times again for that May 11th open house?
Sure.
And also, what is your address?
Sure. 420 Seepy Avenue, and it's from 4 to 7 p.m.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Flom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming today. I'll be at the open house. I'm excited to see the new facility. Quick question, and you may have already gone over this. We're seeing a much higher influx of some pretty lethal synthetic opiates in the community now, like fentanyl. There's been talk about xylazine, which is incredibly dangerous. Do you have a plan of action in place with OPD or the Sheriff's Department to mitigate that if there is any suspected substances of that nature that will be in the shelter?
Yes, so we do have a plan. So, in fact, part of the work that we've been doing in the last 4 months is ramping up our safety and security as well. So we thank the county for that. They helped provide Star Patrol for the last 4 months. Now that grant has gone away as well, but I think we have a really good plan in place. So we allow people to come in and use our shelter intoxicated, but they are not allowed to bring drugs in. Okay. So we do believe that our search process has gotten very good. We're not going to catch, we're just not going to catch anything, but we do have a zero tolerance policy for drugs in the shelter, meaning that if somebody is caught with them in the shelter past search, they are removed from our services.
Okay. And then do you have Narcan on the premises?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Supervisor Gabbard.
Several short questions. So your organization was raising funds for a new building diligently.
Correct.
So you had some funds already. So this grant was 3.5, and I understand that the building is 3.5. So can you use those funds for other things?
Yes,
Other
so
than capital improvements?
yeah, so for instance, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, you know, we had to buy the beds, we had to purchase all the kitchen equipment. So that, much of that money that we had been saving for the last few years went to all of that stuff, because all of that stuff was expensive as well.
And then, kind of an after-the-fact thing, but as you were building the building, you have a security check-in?
We do.
Addition?
We do.
Was that brought about for any special reason? Or was that city code, or is it just to keep track of who's coming in with what they're bringing in with them?
Yeah, so we did add it in the last few months or whatever. The cost was significantly less if we put it in now than if we would have waited. And our architect actually did some digging with the system or the facility or the company that's providing the additional security measures. And one of the things that they said was most sites such as ours across the nation, schools and everything they're in their plans for the next 2 years. So it was probably something that we were going to need to add eventually anyway. And it was about $200,000 more to add it later than it was to add it now. So we added it now.
So here's a worry that I have, and I'm going to feed back off of Supervisor Zelmer. You have an outside smoking lounge.
It's connected to the building.
So you can't get to it?
Correct.
So we're not going to have a group of people sitting out there during Waterfest that are going to
Correct.
be in?
You can't even see it from that.
Okay.
It's hidden behind on the side of the building, and it's all secure, attached to day by day. They don't even leave. They don't even leave the building really. They just open the door. We go to the secured patio, and then they come back in.
Perfect. All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Supervisor Hanson, were your questions answered? Cool. Okay, that's all I have. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good, we look forward to the open house.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll be self-organization, county board proposal. We got Jim Weiss, chairman of the ad hoc head task force on per diems, and Mary Ann Miller, corporation counsel.
Good afternoon, evening, whichever it is, I'm not sure at this point in time. Talking about the thing that was sent out to you, it looks something like this. This is the self-organized counties. I'll bring you up to speed on, hopefully, on a little bit of this about where this started out. We are part of the ad hoc task force on per diems. And this committee, or this task force, I'm sorry, has met 3 times since February 28th. It's on a pretty fast schedule because we had deadlines that were approaching very quickly. But when we met, we found that in order to change the compensation, which is basically what we're about, plans for the supervisors, that we must comply to Wisconsin, it's 59.10 sub 1, which states that changes to compensation may only be voted on at the annual meeting, which is April 2024. That presented a problem because we were trying to get this thing so that it would be done by October so that the new 2024, if you want to call it class or seated supervisors, then would be affected by the changes in the compensation. So if approved, and if it was as long as something that we would present to you would be approved, it would only apply to those new members of 2026. So it's another 2 years after that before any compensation changes would be seen. So, or, there's a big or there. We could vote on an ordinance to become a self-organized county. This is something that is discussed for quite a bit of time with us. what we found out was that of the 72 counties, 52 are already self-organized counties. It doesn't make it good or bad or anything else, but that gives it some credibility. Of that, the 52, we would be, hopefully, we would have this ordinance. We have placed a ordinance proposal to the Judiciary Committee, and they have passed it. It was 5-2 or 4-1 on that. Our committee, the task force committee, passed it 7-0. So what that means is that come a little later in the month, at the next meeting, which is, I believe, the 16th of April or of May, that we should be seeing this ordinance, hopefully this ordinance, and then we can vote on it at that point, have questions, and consider it. So there's only one of the things about this fact sheet. There are three things. You say self-organized counties. As soon as I saw that, it threw up a lot of red flags. And in reading it a little farther, it found that there's really only three things that the fact that we become a self-organized county are going to change. The first one being change in supervisor compensation, which is what the ad hoc committee or task force is looking at. So we can change the supervisor compensation. We can also fill vacancies for Winnebago County supervisors. That's not something that we're going to do. So that's kind of off the platter right now. And the third thing is using staggered terms for election of the county supervisors, which is very interesting, where half of us would be on the even years and half would be on the odd years. So it would make things a lot easier, smoother probably for come the annual meeting there. But anyway, this is about where we're at right now. I've asked Marianne to step in behind me here and have any questions that you have, because I am not a law student, I'm afraid. So, Marianne?
I think what Supervisor Wise just said was very, very appropriate and basically summarized the situation with becoming self-organized. If the board elects to become self-organized, it essentially gives the board more flexibility. What would have to happen is the board would vote on it based on a majority of members present. That's what you'd need in order for the ordinance to pass. Then the legislation would go to the Secretary of State. And again, this is just for the self-organization. And again, I want to emphasize what Supervisor Wise said. It allows flexibility in three areas: in terms of staggered terms, in terms of filling vacancies that occur midstream, and compensation. Now, I do need to tell you that just because you become self-organized does not mean that those three issues are immediately addressed. If the board wanted to go forward and look at, let's say, staggered terms, there would have to be a separate piece of legislation for that. If the board wanted to look at filling vacancies during the midterm, other than having the county board chair do it with basically the board approving it, you would have to have a separate resolution regarding that. Same thing for compensation. You will see in the handout that Supervisor Wise and Supervisor Ellenberger provided. It talks about in compensation that on the books, without becoming self-organized, there is some flexibility. But again, if you were to become self-organized, as Supervisor Wise indicated, you would have more flexibility with compensation, and you would have the ability to review staggered terms and the ability to look at changing, filling vacancies midstream. So that's basically, I mean, it's reiterating what you've said and what's in this document, which is, you know, really, really well done. As Supervisor Wise indicated, I did reach out to the Wisconsin Counties Association. They had said that 52 of 72 counties have decided to become self-organized. So that means there are 20 that haven't, but again, that's, you know, be it as it may. So that's basically what I have to add.
Questions? Questions? Supervisor Ellenberger.
Hi, thank you. So I am also on the committee, the ad hoc task force for per diem. When I brought this forward to the actual task force, I did so with my intentions that we weren't really looking at the staggered and the being able to appoint someone that a vacant spot on the board. So I was only looking at the per diem section of it. Because as of right now, when we're in this task force, we are so limited on what we can present to you guys or to bring forward to the board. Once again, we're only bringing things in to present to you guys once we get to that point. As of right now, though, once again, we are very limited on what we can do. With passing this, we're still limited until we come back to you with a resolution that we can actually go forward with doing the compensation piece, which is the only piece that we're really interested in. What that gives us for leeway or flexibility is that instead of just looking at what we can do for per diem, so we get paid per meeting for this, as of right now, we can look at a variety of things. That, or we can look at if we wanted to go a salary. And I'm not saying that's what we're going to present or what we're going to do. It's just a possibility. As of right now, we cannot do that because we're not a self-organizing entity. So that was one of the reasons why I brought this forth. Also, just to reiterate once again, there's 3 things underneath this. Those are not passed immediately if this is passed. We have to bring those separately. And once again, this task force is only interested in the compensation, not the other 2. If someone else wants to bring those up in the future for future boards, that's great, but that's all we're looking for. Once again, this just passes so that we get this flexibility so that we could go forward if we wanted to do anything different for the compensation.
And just to follow up, as the board knows, with the resolution that established the ad hoc task force, it was only on the per diem structure. The reason this whole self-organization came into play was because becoming self-organized would allow the board to perhaps be more creative regarding the per diem piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supervisor Belleville.
Oh, I accidentally hit that. Sorry.
Okay. Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things that we've addressed per diems over the years. 2 budgets ago, last term, I suggested and brought in an amendment to the budget to establish salaries. I think all of this can be done through the budget process currently. Would you agree?
I would say, again, looking at the handout that was provided to the board, you'll see when it talks about under what it does for a county, it lists compensation of supervisors for attendance at board meetings, but it also does go on to say, see note below, and on the second page of that handout, it says, note, in the absence of self-organization, the controlling statutes regarding compensation are these as quoted. And they talk about 5910-3F. They talk about the mileage 5910-31G. It talks about 5910-3H, which is limitation on compensation. And that talks about basically counties or that basically have a population of at least 100,000 but less than 500,000, which would be limiting supervisors to pay of 30 days, unless, of course, there was an alternative compensation granted under 5910-3L. And I will also say under 5910-3L, it does talk about the board may at its annual meeting by a 2/3 vote of the members entitled to a seat, fix the compensation of supervisors to be next elected at an annual salary for all services for the county, including all committee services, except the per diem allowance for services and acquiring rights of way set forth in 8409. So, yes, you can do that, but again, it's limited in that you would have to do it by a 2/3 vote, and it talks about doing it at the annual meeting.
What are you calling the annual meeting? Town boards have annual meetings.
No,
I'm not aware of the county board having an
the
annual
annual
meeting.
meeting is the budget meeting for the county board,
The budget process.
the budget meeting, yeah.
Okay, so that's back to what I referred to. You can do it during the budget process. Also, there's language in here that I find a little, I guess, confusing because it does address administrative home rule. It does suggest that self-organization might provide more flexibility in the areas you've described, although I don't think that takes away from the current authority we have. But does this change the authority of either the legislative body or administration in regard to department structure, committee structure, anything in those areas that aren't indicated in this sheet?
No, what it does is provide the ability, if the board so choose, to have staggered terms to fill vacancies that occur midterm based on how the board so chose, as opposed to having the county board chair fill the vacancies with the board approving the vacancies. And in terms of compensation, I would say that it does give the board more creativity, though I am not going to take away the fact that the way the statutes are written now, there is some flexibility.
Yes, I
But
would
you would
agree.
have more flexibility if you folks decided to become self-organized.
Could you define more?
Could I define more? Well,
I mean, outside of what we have in regard to setting a salary during the budget process or increasing per diems during the budget process,
well, your
what is the
hands-
more flexibility beyond what we already have?
Well, basically what you just said, if you opted to go the salary route, you would have to do it during the annual meeting, the budget meeting.
Yes.
If you were to become self-organized, you would not have to be you're hamstrung in terms of having to do it in October or November of each year.
Well, if you were to establish the salary, obviously you'd have to provide the funding through the budget process.
Mhm.
Same scenario. Right? Thank you.
Supervisor Stura.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Supervisor Wise and Mary Ann. I appreciate it. So I've enjoyed being on this committee or whatever you call it, ad hoc. And I just wanted to thank Clerk Bartles for providing us with some detailed information too that we could look at as we're in the decision making. So they have helped us, and I just wanted to share that when I was talking with the clerk about how much time it's taking our staff, Ann Dolan, to work on these per diems, it would be roughly about 9 hours. And that doesn't...
Did you say 9 hours?
9 hours, so that'd be like a month. And so things like that are coming out as far as, how do we quantify what the actual burden is to staff? And hopefully we're trying to work for more efficiency for staff as well. And then that doesn't even include the chairman's time, which we really appreciate. So we really are trying to do our best on this, and I just wanted to thank you for your presentation.
Supervisor Nelson.
Yes, excuse me, kind of excited about the idea of being self-organized and not for the per diem that we were looking at, the thought that we could have an election for half of the supervisors one year and half the others. I was so shocked to find out that most all county boards have the same election for absolutely everybody, all on the same day. And I've watched the progress in this county board. We didn't all like each other all that much when we first got here. In fact, we didn't know each other. So it's a lot more fun being on the county board now that we still have our differences of opinions, but we've all learned to work together. And I was on the village board for a while. I mean, 2 people would be elected every year, so you had some continuity to move forward. So I'm not advocating or pushing it now, but I'd vote for the self-organization tomorrow in hopes that somewhere down the line we would get to a structure where half the county board is up for election one year and half the other year, just to maintain the continuity that it takes to run the government.
And just to be clear, even though Wisconsin Counties Association told me there were 52 out of 72 counties that have elected to become self-organized, I do not know if how many of those 52 counties have staggered elections, have the situation with filling vacancies, or per diems versus salaries.
Thank you.
Supervisor Eisen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Wise and Corporation Counsel, what counties that surround Winnebago County are self-organized?
If you just give me a minute, I can look through here, which is my list, is updated as of 3/4/2022, although they said on April 14th, Washburn County, but that's, where is Washburn County? That's not around. Oh, okay. So, okay, Calumet, I don't know if you'd consider Door close, Door County, Green Lake, Manitowoc, Sheboygan, Wapaka.
What about Fond du Lac?
That's not on the list.
Well, the committee studying committee structures, the task force studying committee structures, hosted the county executive from Fond du Lac County. And one of the measures that he shared with us is that Fond du Lac County has, is it 8 standing committees? And then they have their commissions and boards, like the Veterans Commission and those secondary committees categorized in 4 alphabetic classes, A, B, C, and D. And the pay structure that he shared with us is that county supervisors that's serving on a standing committee receive a salary of $3,000 per year, and that members of the committees receive a per diem for each meeting that they go to on those non-standing committees. So if they're not self-organized and they have that kind of arrangement, there must be sufficient flexibility in the present system that we don't necessarily need to step up unless we want to take away the appointment of vacancies from the chair unless we want to have staggered elections. Is that correct, Supervisor Flum? That
Just talk up here, we all want to hear it, so, and we're getting way off the ledge here, we're doing it. Right now, we're just doing self-organization county board proposal by the task force on the per diems. Anything else? Supervisor Eisen, you still have the floor.
No, that, I just wanted to bring that to your attention because that seemed to be a characteristic that you would expect from a self-organized county to be able to have both a salary and per diem. And Fond du Lac County has both salary and per diems.
Supervisor Bender.
I guess one of the big things is, on self-organized, we only need the majority to basically pass a resolution. And if we stay the way we are, it takes 3/4 at the budget, correct?
You're talking,
If we're self-organized and we wanted to pass the resolution for per diem,
It would
it takes
be
the
an
majority.
ordinance. It-
And if we do it at the budget, it takes 3/4?
yes.
So there's a big deal right there. The majority of us want to change the pay structure, and if we do it through the budget, it would take 3/4. In my opinion, if the majority of the people believe the pay structure needs to be changed, it should be changed. You shouldn't need 3/4. So by self-organizing, we can do that. You know, and he's quoting Fond du Lac. Outagamie County, their chair gets $14,000. Our chair gets $5,000. I mean, do I think he's worth 14? I do. I think he works really hard, way more than he should be. You know, $5,000 is a joke. And their supervisors get $5,800 and $25 a meeting. We have a list of all the counties, and we'll do a job study, just like we did for our employees. We did a wage study to see how we paid our employees compared to the surrounding areas, and that's what we want to do. We want to do a wage study on how other county boards are paid, and we want to make sure that you are paid what you deserve. So that's one of our reasons why we want to do this, so we can self-organize and basically get the pay so you're not getting less by $2,000. I made like $3,900 last year, and Yvonne's on the Outagamie Board of Trustees with me. She got $5,800 plus $25 a meeting. We both do the same thing. You know, we got a $190 million budget that we look after. You know, if we don't approve it, it don't get passed. So our jobs are important. I mean, we want to say, well, they're volunteer jobs. They're not volunteer jobs. You're responsible for a lot of money. And you shouldn't take it as a volunteer job. You should take it as a commitment to do a good job for the county, and you should get paid for the job that you're doing.
Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mary Ann, are you quite sure it requires a 3/4 vote to pass the county budget?
No, I need to look at that.
Yes, I believe
I
it's
need to look at
majority.
that.
Yeah, I believe it is the majority. I do sympathize with Supervisor Bender's point on salary. As you know, I brought that forward a couple budgets back, so hopefully there can be some movement on that in future budgets, whether we adopt this new process or not. You still have that option during the budget process, so I look forward to those discussions. Thank you.
Supervisor Albrecht.
I think our present system works very well. I would hate to see us change it. As far as the per diems go, at budget time, if somebody wants to raise it, it can be raised again.
Supervisor Hintz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Marion, I just have one question for you. Was there anything in there about the time for each election as far, because it says staggered, so that would mean half one year, half the next year. It's not like you could switch to 3-year terms with a third each year. I'm just.
No, it would be half in an odd year and half in an even
Okay,
year.
I just wanted to clarify that because it was one of those things I was out there, I was like, oh, if, you know, all of a sudden we could go to longer terms, maybe some people would want that. I don't know. So that's why I thought I better ask you. Thank you.
Supervisor Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mary Ann, what is the number of
I'm seeing 20 different counties. What are the number of counties, what are the names of the number of counties, the 20 counties that are like us right now? In other words, not self-organized. Which ones are they?
I don't have the answer to that, other than I can tell you the ones that are not on this list, and the ones that I know about that are not on this list
Yeah.
would be Outagamie. I do not see Brown. I don't see Fond du Lac. Oh, yeah, Milwaukee. No, Milwaukee is not on here. No, Dana's on, Dana's on, Dana's on.
They're in a world of their own. Yeah, but isn't Milwaukee, they have a separate.
I believe they do because of
They
the
do
population.
salaries.
That's, I don't know if they do salary or what they do. Okay, okay. I can certainly, Supervisor Cox, if you want, I can certainly read this list to you as to the ones that have become self-organized.
Yeah.
Would you like me to do that?
My curiosity is, how close are the ones that we have not talked to, apparently, that actually are like us, given that we've talked to maybe Fond du Lac, to find out that they're comfortable with what we're doing now, and they've added a salary.
I haven't talked to anybody. All I was asked to do was look at the whole issue of self-organization. I do not know what the task force did in regard to that, but I can tell you that I have a document from the Secretary of State for Wisconsin who provided me a list as to the counties that elected to become self-organized. Some of them, and I'm just trying, the first, I see Marathon elected to become self-organized in 1975, and then again, according to this most recent list, as of April 14th, it said Washburn County should be added, although I will point out Door County became self-organized in 2021.
From what Mr. Fari said, it sounds like you could actually add a salary, if you wanted to the current arrangement, or change the per diem through the budget, which I think we attempted to do that 2 years ago. And if it's uncomfortable for us out here going to and from various committees to have $50, and we want it 75, or you want whatever you want, why hasn't somebody brought it up again at the budget time where we can handle it, and we can handle it, I believe, in a majority fashion? Okay? And we wouldn't be changing anything or jumping around between different styles of self-government. I kind of think we're all right the way we are, just quite frankly. If I didn't, I don't overly think that I don't think we're being overly paid or underpaid for the work that we do. For those people that want to have another committee to gain another $50 every time they go to a committee, fine. Stick around
No,
and
absolutely.
learn.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves here on this. All we're asking for is the self-organized facet of this. There are 3 different facets within self-organized, and this is just one of. And we can spend the time when this goes to the next meeting and discuss all the ramifications about, okay, who says this and who said that as far as the other counties go. So I kind of think we're getting ahead of ourselves on it.
Supervisor Gabbard.
Thank you for clarifying that, Supervisor Wise, because you've been tasked with the per diem situation, salary, not the other two subject matters. I don't, we seem to get off the trail here. This county board operates fine. We always have our discussions. I'd hate to see us go to something, another subject matter for another task force where we look at whether we should have split elections. We seem to spend a lot of time on minor things on this board, though, that have nothing really pertinent to do with all the millions and millions of dollars that we have in our budget. I'm sitting here tonight and I go, I don't care if I get paid or not. This is not what this is all about. So we have to get self-organized to allow the ad hoc task force to give us many options on what we have for options for per diem or salary. I don't know, I get a W-2 at the end of the year, and I file that with my taxes. I get $50 a committee meeting. I'm not getting a millionaire out of this. And if you do a salary, you have to be careful that somebody that's not on anything other than the county board is treated differently than if you're on all those committees. So if you're serving on all these committees, you're going to take the salary, and somebody that's not on anything is going to take the same salary. I don't see where you're going to have the equity. But I know you folks that are on that task force haven't gotten to give us the options here. But it always seems when we're trying to work on a rule change or something to do with county board, we have to do this first to get to this. So I'm not in favor of this self-organized county board proposal to get options for our per diem because of what Supervisor Fari said. We can do this at budget time. And if Marianne can confirm that we do it by majority at the budget time, I'm good with that. We shouldn't be wasting, and to me, I'm wasting time thinking about this when none of us are making a lot of money off of this. And I think I know the backside of this per diem, but I'm not going to bring that up. So we have two task force working on two items right now, and they are tedious. I will tell you, I'm on the other one, and it is tedious. There's a lot of work to be done, but we don't have to compare ourselves to all these other counties. So this is Winnebago County. We work for Winnebago County. I don't really care what Door County's doing. I don't care what Marathon's doing. I get the percentages when you tell me 50 of the 72 counties are self-organized. I don't know if that's beneficial. Nobody's proved to me, and I don't think we need to spend hours on this. So I certainly would like our ad hoc task force on the per diem to come with all the options that they can come with and just present that to us. I don't know why we need to do a self-organized county board proposal. I don't like the innuendo that I see in the background here of what it could lead to. So just beware when you read the documentation that once this is in, it leaves another open. It's almost like there's something in the background working here, and I hope we get the per diem resolved and we get the committee thing resolved and we can all move on doing our business that we're supposed to be doing. So, but I do appreciate what you presented, Supervisor Wyatt. I didn't know that was out there.
Thank you very much.
I will think about this, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Want you all to remember, this is just a presentation, just like all the other ones we had just before. This is just a presentation. That's all we're doing tonight. We got another few weeks and we'll be kicking the can again probably on it, but this is a presentation. Supervisor Alberg.
The majority of the counties we're talking about are a third our size.
Supervisor Ellenberger.
Thank you, Chairman. Once again, I'm the one that brought this to the task force. My intentions, I have nothing underlying or anything. I was just trying to give us more flexibility so that we can present you guys with a lot of options. That was it. And it was under my assumption that when I read these things, that we did not have a lot of flexibility when it came to doing that. And we don't. this does provide us with a little bit more flexibility. Once again, my intentions, the other two things that are on this list, I could care less. I mean, it's whatever future boards want to do. I don't even know if I'll be here I don't know if I'll win the next election. I'm just trying to set this board up that when we go into the future, that we're able to do more things, we have more flexibility. No other intentions. My intentions were pure when I brought this forward to the task force. And I'm also looking at this as, I don't know if we go to salaries, if we stay the way we are. I was just also trying to make this more efficient to the actual staff that is doing all our paychecks and so forth. I was also looking at the numbers for how many people come to all the different committees and just trying to streamline it a little bit so that it is more of a fair situation and it goes in concurrent with the other committee, all the other task force. Once again, my intentions were not to underline, to upend any power struggle or anything like that in here. I just was looking for more flexibility. So please, if you have more questions, love to ask or answer.
Supervisor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I listen as a new supervisor, and I'm on the task force too, and I appreciate it. When you're a new, some of you, half of you have been here for a long time and half are new. So new ideas come when you have new people, okay? So, it sounds like a little while back, they tried to do it one way through the budget, it didn't work. Whatever reason, I don't know. So now we have an alternative to try it. It's not gonna hurt us, but it gives us an opportunity as a task force to come up with some more ideas. Still, nothing is getting passed. All that is happening is that we're going this way so we can have more opportunities. The county board decides if we do 1, 2, or 3 of these. But one thing as a new supervisor that I noticed, going to different conventions, this is not just a simple job. This is a job that if you really want it, and at the beginning they told me 2 years is not enough, you won't learn enough to make it. And number 3 is that you got to get involved. You're going to get into committees. You're going to go to other committees to find out what committees are doing otherwise. And there was 12 committees, there's a couple, 3 boards. To know this job, you have to do a lot more. So this is giving us the opportunity. Otherwise, if you're going to do task force and say you can't do anything or don't do anything, well, then you just don't have to have a task force because then we're wasting our time. This is an opportunity that will not hurt us. It will not do anything bad because in a year from now, we could all be different people here. Okay, that could be all changed. So what we have to look at is, are we opening our eyes to something change, different? Because there was a pretty good change here when 18 or 19 new people came, or 15, whatever it was. So there was a change. Things are changing. The executive change. There's a lot of change. So we have to be ready for change. And I think if I remember, there's quite a few of those places that changed to be self-governing. We're not in the last, we're 20 or some just recently, because there was 50 and then they changed a lot. So there was, a lot of that has changed. But I'm just saying, be open-minded. Don't automatically think, okay, there's some trick coming here, because the board has to decide anyway. Whatever we do and suggest, it's not going to be God. It's going to be offered to you. But now we've got a group that's with different eyes, taking like, and I mean, I agree with Mr. Binder. He was on there. I asked him a ton of questions because he has been here longer than me. And he agreed with certain things didn't happen before, but as the board goes, we get new things come up. And we can't go, well, we like everything the way it is. Wait a second. There might be another idea. There might be an opportunity. But this doesn't hurt you. It gives us more flexibility as a task force to bring suggestions to you. The board decides. This is not going to hurt anybody. The board decides what they want to do. And I think it's a good opportunity because as we go along in the years to come, there's going to be a lot of new things going, and the board will change and have different ideas. And again, like Betsy said, that there might be other supervisors here and clear us all differently. So be open-minded, be thinking positive, and think about what can happen here. Nothing, except task force is going to find out some stuff, bring it to you, and you will decide. And that's good. What's bad about that? Nothing, right? So I believe in this. Again, it's just a presentation where we get it all out so we don't discuss. We shouldn't make a lot of time on it because it's an opportunity to try something new. And I think new is not bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to remind you all, All of you been on here, other than one, has been on here for a whole year already, so there's no new ones. Maybe some of us been on here a little bit longer, but there's no new ones. So you've all filled your seats and that and have done a good job. Supervisor Eisen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've now heard several members of the task force on the per diem structure argue or present to us that they want more flexibility. I say, if you want more flexibility, you got to do a little bit more work. Get a hold of Fond du Lac. Get a hold of Calumet. Get a hold of Manitowoc. Find out what the counties who have gone to self-organization, what they've done with it. How have they implemented it? How has it worked for them? How has it benefited for them? If it's a benefit for them, maybe it can be a benefit for us. But I see this task force has got more work to do.
Okay, I thank you for your presentation. So, next up is introduction to priority-based budgeting. Ethan Hallenberger, County Executive Assistant.
I know it's been a long night, so I will attempt to go through this as quickly as possible. This is not really an introduction to the budget, but rather an introduction to the project you might be hearing that the county departments are going through. You'll hear next month the county executive give more information on how the actual budget process is going to look with the data that we're collecting through priority-based budgeting. But the other thing I do want to talk about is why we are going through this project now in light of legislation that was released today on the restructure of shared revenue. So I'll have a brief overview of the framework of the assembly legislation that was released today and the fiscal impact that it'll have for Winnebago County. So first, the problem. Why go through this process, which is labor-intensive and cumbersome potentially? Can we clearly articulate what the county does? We had a question today on what nonprofits the Human Services Department gives to. How do different departments work together to achieve the same priority or goal? What does a program actually cost? And are we using the budget document as a good communication document? It's a piece of policy that you all passed to constrain the expenditures of the administration, but it's also a communication document to our community on what we do as a county, why we do it, and how much does it actually cost. And so the goals of the project are to knock down silos in a way that departments understand how their programs relate to each other and the overall county mission, to clearly articulate for our elected officials, you, the board, and the public exactly what the county does, and to uniformly cost allocate to programs, which allows for better policy discussions. So we have some departments that receive grants, who cost allocate quite well. They receive revenue, they have their costing done. We have others that don't do it in such a uniform manner. This is a way to streamline that through a data set that everybody uses the same theory and information. So if you've been around for a while, didn't we do something like this? Yes, in 2006, the board went through a process of what are the services that counties provide. They passed a resolution in December of 07 or January of 08, and they had a bunch of recommendations from that, and nothing was followed up beyond a few things year after year. And so here we have a planned multi-year approach. We have administration and department buy-in, which will allocate resources to complete and follow up with the project. And rather than it being a one-off project with recommendations, it's tied to the budget process and the decision-making. We also have a community of counties who have followed this similar process. So a lot of counties have gone through priorities and other management solutions, but this one is a scalable. It's actually international, and we're the 4th county in the state to do so. We also have stricter levy limits now than we did in 2006. So simplistically, there are several types of budgeting, but there's really 4, I think, that counties in Wisconsin use. We use base or zero line or line item budgeting. That's the process you all know. That's the accounts and the charts that you see in the budget book every year. There's zero-based budgeting. That is, at the beginning of the budget process, every account is zeroed out. Every department has to defend every dollar and build it back up. There's outcome or performance-based budgeting and management, which is looking at results or outcomes. That's a cousin to what we're doing here, but it's more labor-intensive and it's more performance management focused as opposed to a strategic plan focused. And lastly, we have what's called priority-based budgeting, which is to build a program inventory and to set priorities and determine how those programs fit into those priorities. And so in front of you now, you have the YPBB, you have the compass of PBB, which is to collaborate and communicate, to optimize resources and to receive results. And so you know what resources you're putting aside to contribute to your programs. You utilize data to discuss trade-offs and reallocate opportunities. You tell the story of your community, and you connect decision makers, you and other administration, with department experts to set a transparent budget process. So when you see a line item for travel, what is that tied to? What program are we doing? The example being we do travel in UW Extension every 5 years for a certification for suicide prevention. So you might see a blip in travel one year and say, where are they going? Well, it's all tied to the suicide prevention in schools. You may have heard the term Munis, us talk about that. There's a big upgrade going on. That's our enterprise resource management. That's the thing that kicks out the line item budget that you have, that you see. It does our payroll, does all kinds of different things. That's the financial management side. Resource X, which is in the top corner of your slides, is the priority-based budgeting tool. That's a communication, budget development, policy analyst, and transparency tool. They work side by side and together. So we're not getting rid of Munis, we're not getting rid of the line item that you will see. You will see a budget document that has both programmatic costing and also that same line item that you're used to. We also will continue to use Munis to track the financial allocations. So here's where you see the PBB difference. This is not a Winnebago County budget. This isn't done for the Parks Department here. The roll-ups are actually higher than we typically do. But on the left, you can see that's the typical budget you pass. But what you don't know is the athletic field maintenance costs as a programmer. Are we charging enough for our shelter rentals to make sure we're paying the maintenance on it? Are there revenues that we're leaving on the table? You passed a year ago a special event fee to help pay for some of the costs attributed to large events in Community Park primarily. How do we know those are enough to cover damage in other parts of the athletic field, the soccer fields primarily, the damage done if we have big events? This process will help us allocate not only personnel time, but those line items to figure that out. And so you have a process in 4 basic phases. We do the program inventory. You may have heard from department heads, that's the process we're in now. They are currently doing what is it that we do. They are going to go into program costing in 2 weeks. They will go into some scoring, and then we will take action and utilize the data over the course of the next several years and in the budget process. So the first step is the program inventory. What do? We need this as the foundation to cost. Programs are services or cluster of services that we provide to stakeholders, and they're either a community program or a governance program. Programs could cost across departments, and this is one of the things that we really want to analyze. The first example on the screen is GIS data for our PSAP, which is our 911 center. In planning and zoning, we have a GIS administrator who is spending a lot of time doing the data when there's new addresses and things like that. That is a public safety function. That is money spent on public safety, but we don't see that in a line-by-line budget. Committee prep and staffing. Every department spends time prepping for their committee, sending a secretary. We will have a county-wide program on how much does this cost us and how do we allocate it. So we can see those informations. Ignore the bottom, that was actually a department head note. You do not have to merge the programs before you see them. We will do that for you. Step 2, or phase 2, is costing. So we have personnel. We will estimate the amount of time that each person spends on a program. We aren't a time track. This isn't time tracking. We do have some departments that have time tracking services and programs. We will use that, but most of the time we will estimate personnel time to the individual employee. There's a name, there's a position. Each of their time, whether it's John Damel, Ethan Hollenberger, or Bill Topol, their time will be split and costed to programs across the county, regardless of where they are in their department. We then have the non-personnel, which is the line-by-line outside of labor, and then we have revenue. There might be grants that cover multiple programs. It might be one. There might be cost recoupment through fees for service. Are we capturing that, and are we doing enough to fund that program? Scoring will be done in 2 parts. First, basic program attributes, and then results, both community results and governance results. BPAs are basic things like, is it mandated? What % of the population utilizes the program? And one thing that we're going to add in Winnebago County is it available geographically in the county? So can the north side access it as much as the south side, or the rural areas as much as Oshkosh, or is it Oshkosh focused? We're going to develop that so we get basic program inventory, or basic program attributes to determine what is the impact county-wide, geographically, percentage, to determine the program. Results will then be based on, you will have an announcement on our strategic plan. We'll be having results-based outcomes on that, and then we'll tie some scoring to that program. And so you'll see the BPAs happen. The departments will peer review their scoring, and then the super users, which is the budget team and finance, will finally review it. Mixing PBB into our budget process, this is largely the second half that happens in June in a normal year. So by June 26th, normally there's labor requests, and then by the end of July, there's budget requests. Am I on the right side? Okay. And so that is our normal budget. Scoring results will happen in early August, right before the department head meetings meet with the county executive. The county executive will develop his budget, which will be due to finance September 11th. Again, the same timeline. And then officially, the county executive will introduce the budget to you on September 19th. He will give his budget instructions that he's given to departments in June to you, so that you know kind of the basis of the framework that will be used to create the budget. County board committees will review the budget in October, and then you'll have your budget hearing sessions as normal. I have a pause for questions, but if you want me to go right into the legislation. Okay.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Even on, you don't have the pages numbered, but the part where it says programs could cross departments.
Yes.
Example 1, there's a sentence fragment that doesn't make sense. However, planning and zoning supports what? What's that sentence supposed to say?
They support the 911 center. So planning and zoning supports the 911 center through geographic data mapping.
Okay, my second question is, in a priority-based budget, whose priority is it? Right now, for instance, as an example, Oshkosh schools, maybe the others do too, all second graders get swimming lessons at the YMCA. That makes a lot of sense when you live on the fresh coast like we do. But kids living in a desert, maybe they don't need swimming lessons. My priority would say, well, I think all children should have swimming lessons, but it's subjective. Who's the person who's making those decisions of What's a priority for our county and what is not?
Yeah, the county executive talked about this last month. We will be going into a strategic planning process kind of simultaneously to the budget, June and July. And the county board will have a facilitator option, so you all will be invited to a meeting to go through a facilitation on a strategic plan developing priorities. Department heads will go through a facilitation, and we'll have opportunities for a tabletop exercise for our employees. Long-term, the community and other stakeholders will be engaged in those. So the priorities are set through a strategic planning process of stakeholders coming together to answer the question, what does the county do?
Thank you.
You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to take a minute to remove the smoking mirrors from priority-based budgeting. Priority-based budgeting is nothing more than a methodology and software supporting priority programs. If it wasn't for the software program, you wouldn't be able to take all of the line items that we have in our budget and mix and match how you want to prioritize them. Last evening at the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee meeting, Sheriff Motz told the Judiciary Committee that he is going to be preparing two budgets, one which is the line item and the other is using priority directions. However, from what I have read about priority budget, I suggest that we should complete the strategic plan program first before we get into priority budgeting, because it's been argued by the administration that they want a strategic plan, and the strategic plan is going to give you the priorities. Now, you're going to go budget priorities without a strategic plan. You're putting the cart before the horse. And in 2007, there still are some supervisors here around who were here in 2007. Winnebago County had a personnel function review committee that looked at each and every program in each and every department. It's all digitalized, it's all available for rehashing. And except for the Human Services Department, because that Human Services Department director at the time would not prioritize his human services program, except he would let us take away the DARE program, which is the drug program with the schools. That was the one that he had the least concern about. And I think others who have been here at that time can testify to the same. But basically, this is a software program that's currently available that, of course, we have authorized and given money to the administration to go ahead. But I think we should put that on hold and get our strategic plan in place so we know what our priorities are.
Yes, Supervisor Eisen, we agree. Part of this process, before we will score and make the decisions, the strategic plan will be largely completed as part of this process. That's the scoring component. It's May, that happens in August. We will have a strategic planning process, again, facilitator for the county board, facilitator for the county departments, and tabletops for the county employees to do that process. So by the time we get to scoring for results and looking at it, the strategic plan will be done. I also mentioned that this is a multi-year project. This year, we are under no guises that this will be completed by this budget this year. The process we are going through right now is the program inventory. We've started from nothing. Some departments are using their data from 2007. Some of them have changed. Some of them don't have that. we've provided it. We're also looking at the numerous planning documents that you all have passed in land and water, in public health, strategic plan in health and human services. All of those documents will come together as part of an assimilation into the software. You are correct. This is a tool. The tool makes it scalable for us to do. We'd have to hire a team of analysts to do some of the work and pull out what Munis and other things need to do. So we agree with you. You're exactly right. This is not going to be a panacea. This is simply a tool for us to analyze and look at the data differently. And so we agree that that strategic plan is really important, and that's why it's going to take 2, 3, 4 years to fully get to where some people want to go on this end result. Okay. So planning for the state budget and reform. So you will hear about this in the news when you go home tonight, that the Assembly announced a bill today to reform shared revenue. Here's the framework of the Assembly bill, which mirrors a little bit of what I'm sorry, guys. It mirrors what the governor put out, and so the framework is very close. 20% of the sales tax, 1% of total sales will be put into the local government fund. The current shared revenue will be paid from this fund, which is currently the county municipal aid at $2.18 million, computer aid $641,000, personal property tax aid of $347,000. If you go home and look at your budget book and add those three numbers together, it will not equal the line item of the shared revenue in the budget. That's because the utility aid is also included that in our budget. This bill will not impact that. So there are 4 aids in our state shared revenue line item. These 3 are impacted by the bill. There will be a complete personal property tax repeal, and that will be added to the personal property aid to hold municipalities harmless. There has to be some reform for trailer homes and hangars, which are now taxed as personal property instead of real property. But we are going to follow that language as it relates to our airport. Then there will be a supplemental county municipal aid of $50 million for all counties statewide. For Winnebago County, the proposal is $1.6 million increase, and that is then added to the municipal aid, the 2.1, and then will compound with the growth of sales tax. So that's $3.8 million, making a percent growth of the state sales tax worth $38,000 in future years. Other components include an innovation fund, which is $300 million for consolidations and regionalization. There's a list of specific projects that are eligible. We are requesting an expansion to that because there's not a lot of county government that is included in that. There are also planning grants for municipalities under $5,000 in population. To maintain that money, that new money, that 1.6, there's a maintenance of effort for law enforcement. We have to maintain 2 of those following. And there's broad limitations on the new supplemental aid. You have to spend that new 1.6 on public works, transportation, emergency response communication, PSAP and radios, law enforcement, or fire and EMT. There are policy items you should know about in that. The City and County of Milwaukee will have a sales tax, amongst other things, for their pension obligation. There's a bunch of other policy related to only those 2 governments as well. The police and fire cell phone fee will be moved to PSAP grants. That's a shared revenue funding source now. It'll be renamed the 911 fee and used exclusively for 911. It'll remove levy limit exemption for shared services, which is it actually lowers the levy that you can collect, which is good. The DOR is to post local government spending and comparisons on its website. Local advisory referenda will be prohibited, so the marijuana referendum that you debated, or maybe was only debated in committee, would be prohibited from future years. The powers of a public health officer on business closures would be limited to 14 days without county board approval. There's some school crime data reporting. There's a prohibition on certain preferential hiring for governments. And there's quarry regulations, which we are reviewing for planning and zoning. And there's some local support requirements for future NOLS stewardship grants. With this infusion of new money, we need to allocate it judiciously in sustainability and be able to track it. The other thing that could happen is potential fiscal planning and fiscal cliffs. And this will be more easily to identify programs which could be eligible to share or with other governments, or there is a provision in the bill that allows us to give it to a nonprofit entity instead. So if we were to do that, we would be eligible for an innovation grant. With that, that's the bill, that's the brief overview of PBB and that legislation. We'll have a memo on the Winnebago County impacts as we review both legislations.
Supervisor Stafford.
Just a quick question. You had mentioned, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. You had mentioned in the presentation about personal property tax.
Yep.
Does that hit to the county? I thought that was just to the individual municipality.
You know, I worked on the repeal when I worked in the legislature. In 2017, it was roughly 3% of the total, so it's on everybody's tax bill. And depending on the county and your mix, how much percentage of your property tax it was. So it's every government that collects sales or property tax has some impact. Because we have airport and a lot of marinas, we probably are a little higher than most counties on
Right,
it.
but this is the personal property tax.
Personal
This
property.
is the extra one that, like, businesses have to pay.
The tax on, if you own a bar, your bar stools and your used to be computers and equipment, that's
Right.
Yep, that can be completely repealed. You won't, as a business owner, have to pay it.
Which is okay.
But there's some reforms to it. But we're held harmless that we won't
But
lose
the
any money.
county, so the county got some of that as
Mhm.
well? Okay, I wasn't aware of that, so, all
Yep,
right, thank you.
tax rate on that, yeah. On that form, we apply our tax rate to that.
I see, all
Yep.
right, thank you.
Supervisor Eisen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to refer back to the PowerPoint framework page where we're going to get all of these extra benefits, money coming from the state government, Wisconsin. Question I have is this proposal for revenue sharing a proposal from the governor, or is it a proposal from the legislature?
It is an assembly bill right now, and the framework of 20% of the sales tax and the fund is agreed upon, our understanding, from all three entities, so the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor. What they're quibbling about is the amounts and some of the policy items.
Okay, so it is supported by the legislature.
It is assembly bill, yep, with the governor putting a very similar proposal out in his budget.
Okay, now, the next question I'd ask is going on the next page to other components. I don't see the half-cent sales tax that Winnebago County is eligible to levy.
Yeah, that's in 7770 of the state statutes. That's unchanged in the legislation.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that same page that Supervisor Eisen mentioned the other components, and you may have misspoken, it's not in here, but I can't make it make sense. You said planning grants for municipalities under $5,000 population. Well, I don't know what the $5,000 is. It's not here, but you said $5,000.
5,000 I might have said dollars, I apologize. 5,000 people as population.
Okay,
So,
all right.
and municipalities there, by the way, the statutes refer to local governments as political subdivisions, municipalities, all kinds of things. I use municipalities there to mean towns, villages, and cities.
Thank you.
Supervisor Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Starting first with the assembly proposal you just reviewed. Everyone should be mindful that it is simply a proposal, needs to work its way through the legislature and be signed by the governor into law, and many things could happen with it between now and then. So this is by no means set in stone at this point, correct?
That is correct, other than the framework of the 20%, the innovation fund, the split, some of the components the governor has proposed, the Senate has agreed to, then there's some quibbling on the details. We expect 20% a local government fund will be created either in the budget or simultaneously to the budget. So there'll be something around this with a growth factor.
Yes, but we're still several steps away from it actually becoming a law.
But the sides have it. The governor has not come out and opposed the bill, which is
Well, it's fairly new. It came
Yeah.
out this afternoon. So.
Yes, it was announced Thursday. The legal language came out today. What we're hearing from WCA and the folks in the legislature and the administration is it is very close to a done framework. We don't know the amounts, but the framework is very close. Yes, they have to. The Senate will have to finish their caucusing on it, and the governor will have to sign it. That's why they're quibbling. That's why I put the policy items in there. That's what they're quibbling over right now. But we anticipate on the first page, largely that to be what happens.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting to me that a standalone bill would be signed into law versus something like this put into the budget. It changes how things play out in the future. Back to the priority-based budgeting presentation on page, didn't we do something like this before? I'm going to be honest, you're clear as mud on that at the moment when you talk about the strategic plan and priority-based budgeting and how this all works together, or if it does at all. So you referred to the strategic plan taking several years to come together, but that we would start priority-based budgeting this year. So could you review this page? Yep. Didn't we do something like this before, and try to tie up those loose ends?
Sure. What happened in 2006, there was a program review committee. They looked for efficiencies. That's what I'm talking about in this slide.
Yes, I reviewed that.
Yep. And so the strategic plan, the initial strategic plan will take about 2 months to get to some results, with follow-up going beyond that to go into next year. So to do the initial round, we're going to complete some results this summer. That'll go into the budget. The PBB project and strategic planning to make it more robust, adding specific tasks, things like that to the common goals will happen throughout the next couple of years. So again, the big work being done this year is the program inventory, the cost allocation, the BPAs, basic program attributes, and then by the end of the summer, we will have results that we say, this is what county government ought to be working on. We can do some initial scoring to that. We will keep refining that strategic plan. And then in future budgets, we can also rescore that. So the point is, we will have some results this summer to look at. You will never lose the line by line. This is just another way to look at how are our programs allocated. Our priority this year is the program inventory and the cost allocation, and working through how to implement and get a good strategic plan that is actionable over several years. So the goal is to get initial results this summer with continuing the work throughout the next couple of years.
So this year's, or the upcoming budget will be based on a rough draft strategic plan.
You could think of it that way, but it will be a results. These are the results we expect. We will take that. You will do your budget as normal, and then if we want to add more tasks, add more outcomes to that, we will grow it over the course of several months. We don't want to rush the strategic plan in getting all the components that the board may want to see in it.
Okay, I guess I don't understand why we wouldn't want to plan first and then base a budget off the plan.
Because we can do even without the result scoring, you can look at the program inventory, what programs do we have? You can look at the cost allocation, how are we spending that line by line across the county? And you can look at basic program attributes. Are our programs being used by a high percent of the population? Is it accessible across the regions of the county? So rural versus urban, north versus south, Neenah, Menasha, Oshkosh. You can look at all of those things. Our goal is to have a results-based strategic plan at least initially done to say these are the 5 things that county government does. Safe and secure communities, reliable transportation, well-governed and administered counties are examples that other governments of using for PBB. You can determine those results. When we start saying what tasks do we actually want to do to achieve those results, that's what's going to take multiple years, because that's when you start saying this program isn't in the results that we expect out of these 5 or 6 or basic outcomes or basic, this is what we do. So you can get the structure of this is what county government does this summer. You can score to that. Then in future years, you will add, this is the task, this is the programs we think need to achieve these. Then in future budgets, we can score to say this one doesn't achieve any of our 5 priorities or any of our outcomes. Therefore, we should reallocate to something that does.
But isn't it possible for something to come out misaligned?
Sure.
And then if it's misaligned, do you engage in a course correction, or do you simply discontinue a program because it's not producing the intended results?
Well, again, this wouldn't be necessarily performance. This is what we think county government ought to do. And so that's where, and we can meet beyond that to do that, to discuss kind of how this is framed in other counties. Again, our priority this year, what's the program inventory? What do we do? How much does it cost us? And what are the basic program attributes? Then this summer, what is county government supposed to be doing? 5 basic, 6 basic kind of tenets, and then fill that out in very specific outcomes in a strategic plan.
And then as far as outcomes and performance-based budgeting, I'm on different types of budgeting page.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I envision a government that sets priorities, funds those priorities, implements plans to produce outcomes that demonstrate that we had a priority, we addressed it, or continue to address it, and here's how we do that. Why wouldn't we measure outcomes as part of this process?
We do. The difference between outcome-based performance budgeting and priority-based budgeting is the performance-based management on the back end and how you, if you're in a business, widgets or different things like that. It's more of a performance-based management model as opposed to aligning to your strategic plan. Again, I can show you the differences. There's a book, City on the Line, will show you how more robust outcomes-based budgeting is. Again, this is just the basic. What does county government do? What does it cost us? What are the basic program attributes? Does it fit what the county board and leaders expect out of county government?
And what are the 4 counties in Wisconsin that use this model?
Washington, Jefferson, Marathon, and us.
Thank you.
We are the 4th.
Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask a couple questions about the allocation of staff time.
Mhm.
So I think it makes a lot of sense to, not look at 1,200 employees minute by minute. That feels very tedious. Are there any plans to how do you plan to, I guess, evaluate the correctness of the assumptions?
Yeah, we're working on that. The way we've initially solved for that is we've paired departments together, so they will go through those cost allocations and review. We will look significantly into how do we get actuals in future years. So it's an estimate. Highway and some other departments that have to do grant project-based stuff, we'll have time tracking that we can use and get better data. Some, it's going to be an estimate that we hope to correct over years. But initially, it's the partnerships of the peer counties, or the peer departments.
And then, are there other elements that going into year one of this are going to be kind of guesses, big guesses like that?
Personnel is probably the biggest guess, and some of the BPAs are probably pretty kind of guess what percent of the population uses it. That'll probably be somewhat guesswork. But again, it's not necessarily an exact science. It's just to kind of get department heads thinking, oh yeah, wait a second, only 10% of the population or less is using this, or this is a very Oshkosh focused program. That's about what we're trying to look at, is kind of ballparks, just to get them realizing this program isn't available to everybody.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges I'm going to have going through this is sort of understanding where we're half in, half out in the beginning. Feels like if we had more time to really think through those things, and of course that also means more time dedicated to this as opposed to all of the other things that our staff are already doing, that we might get a clearer, more accurate picture right away. I think this is a good step. Like a lot of municipalities that use have been using priority-based budgeting for a lot longer than we now, and seem to have a lot of success across the country. I haven't really seen examples where it doesn't seem to be a benefit. And so I think my last question is, as we know we're going to have changes from like year one to year two, not because the work is any different, but because we're more accurately able to predict or track, what kind of pitfalls do you see? Do you see that this board should start to be thinking about as we make decisions about this in year one that could cascade in future years?
I think the first pitfall is assuming that it's a panacea and it's going to solve our problems. It's a tool. It's data. It's going to take some time to get to where some of these other organizations are. The first step, I think, this year is it's changing the way of thinking and a way of analyzing the budgets rather than maybe department by department or line by line. It's a change in framework. So the first pitfall would be assuming we're going to go from where we are today to where some of these other examples and some of the research is tomorrow. We have built in roughly 5 extra weeks than a normal project would be. This is normally, about a 2 or 3 month project. We're at about 4 to 5 is where we're trying to get this to. So we have built in some extra time. So as this board kind of looks at it, it's going to be different. You're going to be challenged in, planning and zoning supporting the sheriff. You're going to be challenged in, the Corp Council supporting human services. She does it every day, mental commitments, but you're actually going to see that in a way. And so I think for year one, the sheriff said, I'm going to present 2 budgets. He's not really presenting 2 budgets. He's having this data set, but we're also preserving the line by line because we have to for fiscal management. So it's not 2 budgets. It's 1 budget, 1 document, 2 ways to look at the data in front of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to note the book that County Executive Damel has recommended to us. That's City on the Line by Andrew Klein. He actually loaned me a copy. I'm reading it right now, and it helps me better visualize the roots of priority-based budgeting and the conversation it means to start. And I think, to go back to Ethan's point, this is not going to solve everything, but it will help us more correctly identify the difficult conversations we're going to need to have in the future. Our fiscal picture over time is not going to get any better. We have an aging workforce. Our labor force participation rate is declining. We need to be in a position where we can accurately visualize what we need versus what we want. So I think this is a good first step. I want to thank Ethan for presenting today.
I believe that the executive has the right to do the budgeting as he sees fit. And after he presents it, it's up to us add or delete things when we get a kick at the cat. But it's up to him how he wants to present the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the presentation and the handout and everything. I just wish we could get this ahead of time so we could study it, because I need a little bit more time. I'm just wondering real quickly if you have other options, and you could tell me later too, but I would like to become a little bit more versed in this whole subject, so I feel uneasy about all of this complexity, and maybe I should just read the book, but I do look for more education on this.
Happy to meet with you. Again, the purpose today was to introduce it so that when you hear rumors of what's happening, because departments are working on their inventory right now, they have been for over a week. So you might start to hear these things are happening. Our purpose tonight was to introduce it, introduce the legislation, and say this is why we're doing what we are.
I move to adjourn.